jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Hey, Jack, you look like hell. What did you just say to me? We're on an active protocol, okay? I need to know if you're up for it or not. I like working on you, Chase. You're a nice kid. But don't you ever come into my office and talk to me like that again. Do you understand me? I'm just saying you're on edge. I'd take a bullet for you if I had to, but right now I'm gonna hold the mirror up. You were under Salazar for 6 months. I know what they did to you. And I know what you did to yourself. It's not gonna go away overnight. But today is not the day to try to prove that you're all right. You should mind your own business.
Kiefer Sutherland in one of the most critically acclaimed series on television.
I didn't lose a year of my life to arrest some drug dealer. Salazar does business with terrorist cells around the world. Bringing them down is our only objective. Are we clear?
Concerned about you, Jack. The things you did to get me here, I wouldn't wish on anyone. Let's face it, you'll never be the same. I'm about to name names, Jack. That makes me happy. Because you see, we are connected now.
Son of a bitch.
Open the door! It's on you, Jack! What happens next is on you!
This fall, things are getting personal.
Not only do I work for him, but I'm also a field agent. It's the last thing he wants for his daughter.
How do you know that?
He talks about things. How he wasn't there for you or your mom.
Look, Dad, I find it difficult keeping things from you.
Okay, what's up?
Chase and I have been going out for a while.
And as a deadly threat grows,
Someone close to Salazar is demanding his release. If we don't comply, he's threatening to initiate an outbreak of a very deadly virus.
the strain has never been this extreme.
They found a body that's been infected.
If this virus can't be contained, you are looking at a global disaster.
It's CTU carte blanche. Whatever they need, make sure they get it.
This kid's walking around with a bag of cocaine that's got the virus in it, and he doesn't know it. I need to find him and stop him from putting it into circulation.
Chase, we got a runner!
On October 28th.
Do it!
The first wave of attack will be terror.
I think the cow singer might have been infected.
The last line of defense will be him.
Just do it now!
The season premiere, October 28th on Fox.
And welcome back to the show, ladies and gents. I got film buff and 24 fanatics Seth Gent here. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very good, very good. Well, it's been a while. It's been totally a minute in many ways. But we're getting back into just covering the whole damn 24 saga. So we're just gonna once again just continue the trend of covering 2 seasons at a time.
Just dive right in, man.
Dive right in. So before we begin, I'm going to ask you how you first encountered the ticking clock that was this show.
You know, I'd heard about it from my friends, and I think I told you I watched it live. I watched it while it was on TV, but I was actually maybe a season or two behind. I was buying the DVDs while the show was still airing. Season or two behind, because I'm not going to start a show on season 3. I've got to start from the beginning. So I bought the DVDs and fell in love with it, and ended up buying the whole series.
Yeah, TiVo was kind of coming to effect around 02, 03, and it was definitely pretty big by around 05 to 07, you know?
Right. Yeah. And so the hype was big around this show, and
I was always out of luck. Each time I tried to rent it from Blockbuster, like disc 1 through 2 were out of stock, but discs, 3 through 5 you could get. I'm just like, I'm not doing that.
No way, man. That's how I do. I got a sister, and she'll start a show on season 3 or season 4. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I've had friends go in reverse chronological order. I mean, I can see a greatest hits. I can casually like watch something I've seen a bunch of times, like in the background, but I'm not, like you, I need some chronologic order here.
Some sequence of events. And plus, you got to have that character development anytime you're going into a show like 24.
And it was really unavoidable. I was constantly like seeing ads for like everything, whether it was on pay channel or DirecTV or whatever, and it was just like, it's like coming up on FX, it's The Shield. Coming to Fox, it's 24 and Prison Break.
Jack
My house. Yeah.
Kiefer Sutherland was making bank while this show
was making bank. And
he was one of the highest paid TV stars at the time. I think the only, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, the only people that were making more than him at this time were the 2.5 Men. Is that right?
Yes, that's often what I saw. Is like Hugh Laurie was being paid a shit ton for House, and then Charlie Sheen was being given the world for 2.5 Men. So yeah. Right. No one else on any other sci-fi, sitcom, crime, or horror show was definitely making anywhere what they were making. And I don't think it was even favoritism or anything. It was just, I think, because they were just previously movie stars and they were banking on that, what have you, and they just, their agent had negotiated.
Most of those shows were a huge, huge success.
Oh, yeah. They're being made for over like 400 million or some shit like that. So it's like it was a total investment, and it is wild how it almost got canceled halfway through season 1, and they just loved the award hype and hyping up the DVD sales, so they just took a chance on it. Now, if they did that, they would not give any of that a chance.
And that was at a time where DVD sales were just out the roof. We didn't have any streaming or anything like that going on. So if you wanted to watch it and you didn't have the means, DVDs is the route you went.
Oh, totally. And when we get to season 4, I mean, that was when Criminal Minds started premiering that same fall. So it's just like, I mean, everybody then started kind of catching on. They were seeing what this and CSI were doing. So there's like, okay, we got to have a very just creative, this is almost 2 decades before they decided, let's get a famous movie star, and, everyone else gets paid nothing, but the main movie star will carry the show. So now, we got shows like Yellowstone where we're paying Kevin Costner $30 million an episode, and everyone else is making the typical $400 a day fee, $50 if you're an extra. But it's just like, it's very interesting seeing here how this was like the start of the gimmick driven show. It's like, and then, Bones comes out later and the same kind of deal. It's like, it's okay to be a deviation of the other formulas that are out now, like Law and Order or Sopranos. But you got to not get in trouble, too many complaints with the Parents Television Council, and you got to be able to at least market you for the Emmys, at least for, prime time to.
Yeah, it was really a trailblazer as far as TV series were.
You couldn't syndicate it at all. They tried multiple times. I remember one of the antenna channels, I think that was owned by like Fox or NBC, would air like old Star Trek reruns, Twilight Zone, and other stuff. And they tried like with season 6 of 24, and it just, I guess they stopped. They just found that they tried. Even, FX would do that. They would do marathons all day with the previous 2 seasons. And I remember them doing that definitely with Prison Break too, where they would just show the entire season all day. And
there you go, hitting on Prison Break. That's another one of my favorites, man.
oh, totally, great show. And
the big difference in a show like 24, we were talking about 2.5 Men earlier. You can see the money that they're putting into the production. 2.5 Men, you're paying Charlie Sheen that, but otherwise you're on a set pretty much. 24, they're crashing helicopters and blowing stuff up, and you can really see what a big investment it is.
Oh, totally. And last time when we talked about season 2, we talked about how John Cassar had been a Canadian director. And, prior to that, it was former movie director Stephen Hopkins who had determined the visual style because he saw the script and he noticed, hey, this is, going to be very repetitive if I got, because when you write a script, you write where it's set in the scene or you just indicate it's a voiceover. And he was just constantly just saying, we got to make this be split screen so it's more involving. Everyone can follow the action around more easier. And, John Cassar took that.
It's occurring in real time, too.
Oh, yeah. And if you look at, I know you've seen all the special features, but for those who don't know, Cassar and all these other guys, the editors, the cinematographers are always talking about how, due to the actual having to adapt the real-time formula and having 24 hours worth of actual footage, they weren't able to blow screen. They weren't able to, they used limited CGI, they had to actually blow something up. And they couldn't storyboard it. It had to be in the moment. They had to, stage it with the actors, rehearse a bit. Sometimes the rehearsals, of course, would make the final take. And Cassar, the only control he had, he even said in a recent interview when he was talking about the other show he's working on now, the Orville, which is a Star Trek spoof / original sci-fi show. And he talked about how he never said no, ever. The only ever time he called into question, said, can I change it up a bit, was on season 5 when they had to do the plane landing. And it's just so funny how, it's like you look at the special features, is like the only stuff he's storyboarding are the, action scenes, the gotcha moments, that open up the whole thing,
Right. Well, I like that.
Well, and you got to, you got to say, where's the RPG going? Where's everyone reacting? Organizing the chaos. And it is just so wild how he didn't even expect to get all these other offers for all these comedy and sci-fi shows. Cause here he was known as just the grim, interrogation guy. As some backstory. So season 3 opens up 3 years later after season 2 and begins at 1 p.m. Jack and Tony must infiltrate a Mexican drug cartel. The drug lords are the Salazars, and they have obtained a deadly virus that's being marketed underground to the highest bidder. Jack is forced to break one of the brothers who's imprisoned out of LA nearby prison while retaining his undercover alias and kicking a heroin addiction that he's developed. Furthermore, President Palmer must deal with a potential scandal involving his chief of staff, who also happens to be his brother, Wayne. And this could cost him his presidency. Okay, so let's start off with the pros.
Well, you're talking about the Salazar brothers, so I just want to, as far as the 24 series, they were one of, if not the most memorable villains. Obviously not more so than Nina Myers, but I really enjoyed the Salazar brothers, and I enjoyed the setting in the Mexican setting that they were involved in, just because it seemed different than what we had, typically.
Absolutely. I like
24. You're seeing LA, you're seeing New York, big top cities where, obviously any terrorist would want to attack. But the Mexican setting was gritty and dirtier. And I just liked what that brought to the show.
Oh, totally. And I light up anytime I see the Weiser brother, played by Vincent Loresso, who's actually Italian, just in anything, just because I've just seen him in just so many movies and shows. And currently he was on that other show with Ray Liotta and J-Lo, the police corruption one, and Shades of Blue. I thought he did a good part there. And Vanessa Ferlito is just flat out gorgeous, but just so mysterious in any part she plays as the girlfriend of his. And I would even yell out her name, me and my mother, because whenever we recognized her in another role, we go, Claudia. But no, I definitely got to talk about Raymond, played by Joaquin de Almeida, who many will recognize from Desperado. But you might also remember him as that other cartel member in that Tom Clancy, Jack Ryan film, Clear and Present Danger, which is a very similar storyline and the exact same kind of role where he's, part of the drug wars and just also instigating some violence with his ulterior motive.
He's doing some drug stuff. I can remember when I watched the show, I actually watched the whole series twice. I watched it, by myself, and then I got my mom to watch it. I'm like, you got to watch this show. It's so great.
I did too. I got my grandparents addicted to it because they were into stuff like NCIS and other stuff.
Involved. That's good, man. So I watched it, with my mom the second time through, and I can remember that voice recording that they did when they wanted to, I'm demanding the release of Ramon Salazar. And I would walk around reciting that voice recording, I don't know. It's just, I thought that was so neat how they did it at that time.
And it definitely of the time, like they're doing technology that's not far from them. Like when they got to season 4, Carlos Bernard, who plays Tony Almeida, noticed some various computer fiction that was being discovered by the feds. And he started suggesting that to the writers, is like, hey, how about you start looking at showing them decrypt some, terrorist code, all these words mean this in actuality. And yeah, having the encrypted messages, I mean, that's always been a thing, but it really was still on the rise. You were commonly seeing the 6 o'clock news and hearing about some, kidnapping and, a voice that you couldn't trace over the phone. You have to plan how to watch this show because like, if it gets, it's impossible to watch just one. You got to plan it out when you're binge watching this, and how it invented the binge watch before it was a thing is great. But yeah, sorry, go ahead with your earlier point.
Absolutely. With you can't watch just one because they always left you wanting more. Every single episode was like, what's going to happen next? What are they going to do now? And it was so good that they were able to do that in a real-time series.
I've read some of the other books, and you might remember Eric Balfour, the 6 Feet Under guy who was in season 1 and later season 6. He's in a bunch of adventures with them and sometimes runs field ops with Tony and Nina before she goes bad. And I kind of thought it would have been cool to have him come back, but instead they just had a bunch of the other like extras that, for those who don't know, much like Star Trek, they had a bunch of recurring like extras who had names and sometimes like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue. And this is like one of the final seasons for some of them. Who have been around since the first 2 seasons, just went around taking note. I see a lot of complaints that, some don't find this as good as season 1 or 2. I will admit this, like the only con I got is that, they introduced Chloe and she really doesn't get to do anything except decrypt one of the ransom messages that's going to leak all the sensitive, confidential information of the agency out. And the rest of the time is like, she just kind of just walks around and just, argues with people. And I thought
comic relief.
It's a minor complaint, but like just going back on it now, they could have maybe made her more, I don't know, a little more witty. It just was a little more dry. But don't get me wrong, I mean, usually I would always find at least 1 or 2 deleted scenes that I would be like, man, that could have really worked. Like there were extra scenes of the president's son in season 2 that I was like, yeah, no, that's criminal. They should not have cut that out. That was, great. But the rest of the time they were just extended murders and other stuff that either killed a layer of the suspense or would have just overplotted it, so to speak, or gotten too repetitive. So I was okay with them cutting it for time or just artistic merit. Right. Like there was even a murder scene that did not look finished. It did not look right. So I was like, yeah, that would have been something I see in a B movie, that plays late at night at 3 a.m, not, on a great show like this. So, yeah. But season 3, they really got wise. Like, one of the complaints they had gotten back feedback on or heavily criticized for was having, Jack Bauer's daughter Kim be attacked by the cougar. But
yeah, what were they doing with that?
that was pretty bad. But like, yeah, with this, like, Kassar was spending extra time in the editing room, and he is like, wow, we got too many characters in here that, like, I mean, the writers embraced, basically they went for an unrealistic show, but they also wanted at the same time to kind of, not to be contrarian, but to at least have some kind of actual technology and look of what a place like this might look like. And so they got to a point where it's like, yeah, there's all these minor characters in the back, and one of them, they literally omitted one of their storylines, and it was played by this one guy. I forget his name, but he had previously been on the other hit Fox show, Mad TV, the sketch show based on the magazine.
Right.
And basically he was just spending time being a douche and just smoking in the break room. At one point he even sets the sprinklers off and is like, yeah, it is like, some stuff people just need to read the scripts better and save themselves all the time and money. That would not have worked. That would have been very laughable. So, but this is when they were still on film, and just, people just have to sometimes see it visually after wasting all that time and money to see, yeah, that doesn't work. So
if you look at the format of shows now, though, they do spend a lot of effort with that ensemble cast.
Yeah, they are heavy with the editing. If someone is misbehaving, they work very heavily overtime to cover up any glitches. They will gladly do just some ADR,
Yeah. Yeah, and I see what you're saying. I mean, this show was done at a time where maybe the ensemble cast wasn't as popular as what it is in the more modern shows that we're watching currently on TV. Like,
totally. If you tried to do this now, basically you would only get investors if, again, you were either the movie or the TV guy. And if you're a character actor, this is kind of the thing, is like most of these guys were character actors or people who had just now breaking out into fame. They had just started in like acclaimed short films or done some soap operas or just guest spots on all kinds of shows. And so, well, without spoiling it, what did you think of the first plot twist where you find out there's like some other person who has helped set up this whole undercover infiltration of the cartel? Didn't you like how you're kind of in suspense and you're like, who is that mysterious voice? Is he one of them, or is he also undercover with Jack and Tony's?
Yeah, at first I thought, well, this is just a ploy. They're trying to get Ramon out of prison. It's all part of a master plan. And then you kind of, like I said, I really enjoyed the Salazars, and I actually enjoyed them more than I did Stephen Saunders.
That's a good point.
Once it got away from the Salazars, it was almost kind of it's almost kind of a disappointment, because I wanted them to stay, consistent in the storyline. And they I think 24 kind of went away from that a little bit midway through the season. Not that Stephen Saunders wasn't good, and a lot of people view him as being one of the, greatest villains in the series.
Yeah, let's get to him a bit later. I'll definitely build on that point. Yeah, the Salazars, other than just Joaquim de Almeida chewing a bit of scenery near the end and just like kind of just, I got my eye on you, Jack. You're only alive because my brother said don't kill you yet. It is interesting how, the brother buys that. He's like, hey, he went to all the trouble of breaking out of prison. Of course,
Right.
He's a crooked smuggler posing as an agent, or some shit. they never get the full story.
If I'm being completely honest, I was so disappointed that the season starts out with Jack having an addiction to heroin.
Yeah.
Up until that point, he's viewed as such a moral, well, not really moral, but just a guy that's always going to make the right decision no matter what. And at that point,
last season,
when I was watching it, I was like, Jack, no, what are you doing? You can't do this. But looking back on it now, I mean, it's evident, why he made those decisions. But at that point, when I was watching it, and I was younger, I was like, why?
What are you doing? Yeah. It's not without some blood. When he breaks him out of prison, he he just he inflicts more guilt upon himself because at that point he can tell that some guards got killed as the result of his prison riot,
Right.
and him tampering with the security to break him out.
Yeah.
I do like how they're just so ruthless. Like they get a guard, on the payroll to like interrogate. I mean, Salazar even kills his lawyer after he gets him a shitty deal. It's like, Jesus, these guys are ruthless. And I like how they do art direction in the prison. Fun fact, I actually did extra work on that other produced Fox show, Queen of the South. I don't think it's too great a show, but I did get to see Raymond Salazar on set there, blow drying his hair.
Oh, awesome.
And we filmed in an actual prison that was being closed down for that day. It was just something else. I was like, wow.
Well, this prison in 24, it's actually a woman's prison, right?
I think so. I think they did say that in the special features. And it's really cool how is like the reason they're acting so legit to the phone conversations is like any actor, even if they only had to do voiceover, they would actually come on set and act with the person. And so, it wasn't just Kiefer doing that. It was also Michelle Dessler, what's her name? Rico Iosworth, who I like at this point. Now she's married to Tony, and they don't play it up. They don't do any, workplace privilege or anything. She's now basically overseeing kind of some of the field stuff and tech support.
Yeah.
And any mishaps in the bullpen.
So you would have rather have more romance involved?
No. I'm not saying that at all. I liked how they kind of made it up front. Like they just give each other the glance and they respect one another, and they never feel aside. They never feel absent from one another because they're at the same office, so they can comfort each other without all this other bullshit. And I liked how, there's about 5 villains for this whole season, and I'll get to one of the other ones in a minute, maybe 6. So they did pretty good considering this was a bigger season for them to have even bigger names. Because it's like the last 2 seasons they basically had, 3 main villains, and then like 3 henchmen, with a name or something,
Yeah. So at this point, you are on your 3rd season. You're trying to go bigger and better. Did you think they were able to go bigger and better than the first 2 right here on the 3rd one?
I think in their own special right, it doesn't feel that way at first because they do take a while to just show kind of the undercover stuff. But there's a reason I've watched this in season 4 and 5 the most, and even parts of season 6. It's just by this point you got the formula down, and so it's just more faster paced, and you can still develop the character. What do you think of Jack's heroin addiction? I'm no expert, but some people weren't able. One of the complaints was he kind of kicks the addiction, but I don't think that's true.
Exactly what I was going to say. He is Jack Bauer.
Yeah, I get that we're going to have to suspend
the heroin addiction pretty quick. I hated that he did it. I hate that he was addicted to heroin, but he gets rid of it pretty quick. It's like, how many episodes? It wasn't many.
I would say it's about 3 episodes where he stops snorting, but at the same time, it's not like he did it bluntly and it was injected. And at the same time, like, I think I could also suspend a little belief, being that he is former Delta Force and that he had probably bigger resistance. I liked how they brought in what's her name from, like, I think the CDC, believe it or not. So before we were facing Corona, and don't get me wrong, this season still kind of works in a cool kind of outbreak way near the end without being depressing and reminding us to today's world. But yeah, no, that actress is from NYPD Blue.
Another thing to consider, you're talking about the heroin addiction. I mean, you said 3 episodes. That's really just 3 hours. So I can see a heroin addict not going 3 hours without a hit. I mean, I guess if you look at it in those terms, it is plausible.
Well, and that's just it. I think everyone's just looking at it. It's all in the course of a day. I'm like, yes, but we're gonna have to suspend belief on that anyway. But what did you think about Dr. Duncan, who's played by Andrea Thompson? You might know her from Jag and Babylon 5. The blonde-haired gal who just comes in and she's like, she's the one who notices, like, Jack, what's that under your,
Yeah, I mean,
car?
any of the scenes, there was only a few. I did think that it was believable. I did think that they made the heroin addiction believable while it was going on, but they just got rid of it quick. And it was a small subplot, but I don't really felt like it had a lasting effect on the overall season.
No pun intended.
Right. And then I mean, I know he ends up getting fired because of that, but I don't want to jump ahead of you here.
No, I totally understand. Yeah, I mean, in many ways, they basically decided, okay, let's not have this hang over him because he does have to be undercover. So let's talk about what a bigger jackass Ryan Chappelle is this season. He's like the main head of CTU at this point. Now, he's already been knocked out by Tony. And it's kind of funny, is like in season 1, he was basically ripping George a new one. Season 2, he basically was taken over briefly and not approving of anything, Tony was doing. And he's like, you're only here because Division doesn't have a problem with you. I will always spite you because I spite everyone. Right. It's very clear that he's not only a bureaucrat, but he just fears for like the agency's look and everything. Yeah. And he never knows how to be productive. He basically only stays away from Jack Bauer because he's just like, he's afraid to just touch him for whatever. You never know if it's because he's just like, he considers Jack a loose cannon and he wants him to just basically burn a bridge with his career in the agency, or if he just thinks, well, he's getting results, so I'll leave him alone. But I got to micromanage. I got to micromanage you. I don't
right, and he's micromanaging things that are not an issue, really, I think.
Yeah, always redundant issues, always. And sometimes, like, he'll bring up stuff they suggested hours ago is like, well, now I think we should concentrate on it because the president said so, and we all want to look good. So it's like, but I'm glad they have that because that just, I find that more believable. You almost always will see law enforcement is worrying about, oh dear, someone complained on the media about us.
Looks. Yeah, it's all about how the department looks, and
we got to notify the LAPD.
He was on the show that was just real easy to hate. And I think that makes for good TV because, you're sitting there watching and you're like, oh, I hate this guy. And that keeps you invested in the program.
Yeah, and it's the better kind. It doesn't feel forced or overblown. And I guess the only thing you pretty much got to suspend belief is, like, they didn't need to bring Kim back. Kim was often, the sex appeal of the show for younger viewers, and at the same time, she basically only gets in because Jack puts in a word for her, and she has like some computer science degree. But I was just like, seriously, you don't need that.
That was probably the biggest disappointment of this season is her involvement. Really,
she has nothing to do except
the cougar scene, and when you're watching that, you're just like, what does this have to do with anything that's going on? It's like they're trying to stick it in there, and it's really unnecessary. They could have done this season without her, I thought, and it would have been just fine. She's had some hiccups as an actress, I believe, here along the way.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the actress, but it's just the character, was just so goddamn annoying. And it was just like, seriously, just this person should be at home. She could have. I will say that too, is like this season begins just off the chart, just fast. And it's kind of a shame that they end Jack's relationship with his Kate Warner gal from season 2, who he saved from that evil sister who happened to be a terrorist. And I was like, that's a shame because she, to me, I know this is controversial, but I always, in my opinion, she was the only love interest of Jack's that I thought really worked. Just felt legit, occasionally heroic,
Yeah, I can remember thinking that at the time I watched it too. I was like, where's Kate Warner? How come she's not got a bigger storyline going on with her? And then they're bringing in new people, and so
she would have been interesting because I think she was patient. It's just she also just kind of wanted to think about anything else, and Jack, again, was undercover, and so that it makes sense and everything. I'm just saying. I mean, these were characters that did deserve to actually be together because it's like, yeah, we're feeling bad about Jack's wife dying, but let's be honest, Terry was pretty annoying, and then you get to some of the other ones, and it's like they're off the walls, just about to have a breaking point or get kidnapped or just do nothing but yell Jack, Jack, Jack. So I don't know. But this brings me to my next point. Kim is dating Jack's
predecessor.
Yeah. Little Jack, Jack Jr. Chase Edmonds, played by James Badge Dale. Now, for those who don't know him, you might know him as one of the other moles in The Departed. You might also know him from TV shows like The Pacific, and you might have also seen him in other movies like Iron Man 3 and what's the other one? 13 Hours and Spectral. He's always been a pretty reliable guy, but around this time, he really hadn't been on anything else besides the TV show Rescue Me and then a crossover episode with the CSI shows. And I really liked that one short-lived gangster show he was on called The Black Donnellys back when he had curly hair. But yeah, here, this was his first real big break, and I thought, wow, he's a very reserved guy. I would totally like to see him get a bigger movie career,
Yeah, I thought he did a good job as well. You mentioned Rescue Me. I'm just starting that series. I've not watched it before. Somebody told me to go back and watch it because the reason they told me to go back and watch it is because they said that some of the raunchy things that they say would not be accepted in today's society. And so that is what prompted me to go back and watch it. I was like, oh, that sounds interesting.
Well, that and I don't know. It's like so many people get just stuck up when they want realism, but then they don't want to actually hear some blunt stuff. And it's just like, well, here's the thing, you're going to see something politically incorrect in the works of fiction, whether it was seen by somebody or not. And at the same time, I mean, you pretty much got to do extra stretching of indicating to everybody, hey, we're in on the joke. We know what we're saying. We know how we're going about it, but sometimes it's just not enough. But yeah, no, this guy, the actor James Badge Dale has been in just so much stuff. And he was probably the best thing about that Lone Ranger mishap. He plays the title character's dead brother at the beginning. And I'm like, well, he gave the best performance of the whole damn movie. Cause I'm telling you, he and Johnny Depp looked pretty bored. And
but I thought he did a real good job here. The character that he plays brought some depth to the series, and he serves as a real good field agent and counterpart to Jack. The love interest that he has with Kim Bauer, yeah, I can take that or leave it. I'm sure everybody has their own opinion on that.
They don't focus on it too much, but for that first episode near the end, you do kind of just squint and just say, that's pretty dumb. But no, he's a pretty cool protege because, I mean, he does know that the whole, on his face how it reads, let alone how he responds to Jack, is like, I'm trying to figure you out, man. I respect you, but you got to let me in. And at the same time, Jack's like, Jack's not a don't question me guy, but he does kind of just, he does fear for Chase. He doesn't want him getting harmed because I don't think okay, so here's the question. Do you think he views him as kind of like a cousin or just a young kid he has to mentor and just keep safe?
How I take it.
Okay. I saw some people saying he was treating him like a son. I'm like, get out of here. Not even close. He doesn't even call him. Jack just doesn't want any harm to happen to anybody, let alone to LA.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think he's just trying to bring him up through the ranks and teach him, what he knows. And I think he's trying to get him to watch him and see how he responds and how he reacts to different circumstances and situations. And so you can tell on Chase Edmonds has real good little quirks about his facial features. You know, he could move an eyebrow or squint an eye.
He could really blend in. So when they go to the mall stuff,
like he knew what he was feeling at that moment. You know, but he's confused about this. You know,
and when they're at the mall at the beginning, Chase, as well as later on at the subway lockdown, later in the season when we get to that, you do buy that he could blend in. He could look like just any other passerby, you know, a reporter or anything, you know, and you wouldn't notice his headset. And you know, it was before, you know, everything was recorded on camera and we were finally bringing all of law enforcement into question. It is very interesting, and rightfully so in many cases. But yeah, it's interesting how here, yeah, he, like, when they're interrogating the one guy who has some connection to some of the drug cartel and other couriers, when they're, you know, trying to without giving it all away, is like they're trying to find some other guys who know other guys who basically are part of the whole network, and you know, they want to get a hold on everything for the Salazars, from their bank accounts to just other people who know and, you know, fear them. And when they're doing that whole, you know, shootout filled chase, I get it, Chase is the bad guys, but no, you know, it's like, it's just so wild. Jack pins the suspect against the wall, and he says Chase, and that's basically Chase goes into interrogation mode and just like cuts the guy with a knife. Not enough to like make him bleed out, but just like nicks him mildly. And it's like the guy's like, "Oh, what the hell? You guys aren't cops." And he's like, "You're right, we aren't cops. We're federal agents." And it is wild. Yeah, it's like, it's so funny. I've seen, again, shows like this so many times that I do often kind of tense up when I see a giant, you know, dark van. I never know if it's like housing a celebrity or a federal agent or even a cop car. You know, it's like, you go to any other cop car, they're almost as big as that. And just like to have those giant Ford trucks. One of the co-creators previously worked on Miami Vice. Do you feel like it's a little bit a mixture of that as well as kind of Outbreak near the end? This whole season?
I can see the relation there that you're looking at.
Yeah,
with my device, I can kind of get that because the format is similar in nature.
How about I bring us about face? So we pretty much are in agreement that everybody has a lot to do, and there's some just stellar characterization. What did you think about? This is so funny. This was one of the first roles I saw this actor in. Adam Kaufman, played by none other than Zachary Quinto, before he was on Heroes and played Spock in those Star Trek reboot things. And it was so funny. I showed this to my siblings one time, and they were like, "Why does that guy sound so much like Spock?" I'm like, "Because he played Spock in the reboot track." Yeah, you remember him? He's one of the other hackers who's just like getting all pissed off. He's like, "I'm sick of your crap, Chloe."
He's just well, at that time, did he have a big role?
Enough of it. He's in almost all the seasons, and it's kind of messed up. Like near the end, when we get there, it seems like there's a bunch of agents and other people he knows who are being infected. And
to be honest, he seemed kind of suspect to me. I was always ready for him to be, you know,
like a double agent.
I was always looking at him like he's going to end up doing something. You know, he's going to be, something like that.
Surprisingly didn't. He basically left him alone, and he's just trying to get his work done, but he hates basically how everybody's getting it done.
Because you know how when you watch the show, they're always like showing little subtle clips of what people are doing, and they're like, it's misdirection is what it is. But they really put a lot of misdirection on his character.
Yeah, deliberate misdirection. It's not.
So I fell into that. I was like,
even in season one,
he's going to be into some cahoots with somebody, you know.
Yeah, because I mean, even in season one, they had a idea of what they wanted. It wasn't a not sure what to do. But yeah, no, even going back into this, it's really interesting even seeing what actors have bigger roles later on, like Mark Rolston, who plays the hitman later, you might know from Aliens. Patrick Fabian, who you might know now as Hamlin on Better Call Saul, is one of the hotel guests that gets away at the end. Bridget Branna from Army Wives is one of the other Chandler Plaza victims, and Michael Cavanon, who's this bit part B-movie actor, is one of the other House executives. He's like the Secretary of Homeland Security. But
But when I was working, anytime you watch a series like this, or anytime I watch a movie, I'm always like, "Oh, you recognize him? Oh, you know what we saw him in?"
Oh yeah.
You know?
I'll step back and let's cover President Palmer's timeline. He's now seeing his doctor, who's nursing him back to health following his near assassination attempt
Right.
on his life. She's played by Wendy Crewson, who you guys might know from various Canadian shows, and especially from playing the First Lady in Air Force One, which the show is most like. What did you think of him, his new dilemmas, as well as dealing with his brother's scandal? So smart, and yet he just can't keep his equipment in his pants.
At first you're like, well, he's going to guide, he's going to be of a real assistance. He's going to, help steer him in the right direction. And then you find out he's got all these other flaws. And that's just something that Palmer always, it seems like he's just constantly having to deal with right there. Well, especially in the first half of the season.
Oh, totally. And this show was, I always felt this was very much like some of those other ones, like Homicide and NYPD Blue and even Law and Order. Is like people were watching it, but not as many people as who were watching something more casual like Bones or CSI or House. Because it's like, basically, you pretty much know it there, then up in there. You're seeing the dark side of politics just coming at your doorstep. And I guess viewers didn't hate on that. They just understood, hey, stuff we don't like to talk about, but we know it exists. And they had already kind of opened that up with season 2 by just showing how his wife was just so unstable, so power hungry, and doing business with even dirtier people who, Palmer already had to fire his previous, I think, campaign head, because he was also, the devil was in the details there. And here, basically we open up and, he's basically, his brother, again, who's his chief of staff, just instantly tells him, by the way, Milliken wants to see you. Palmer just raises his eyes up. He knows instantly who that fucker is. He is not only one of his biggest campaign contributors, but also basically holds all his darkest secrets. He sends him the photos, is like, here's your brother with my wife, played by Gina Torres, who many will have known at that point had just appeared in the then canceled cult show that was Firefly and was later in the Matrix movies to her then husband, Lawrence Fishburne. But yeah.
So he's got all that going on with his brother. And then Sherry Palmer comes in and
he's like,
she has a lot bigger role. And so it's just a lot going on in the political side of the series.
Oh yeah, it gets even more messy. It's like one of the other couriers basically tries to mess with them, and then they decide to not pay the ransom. So then Milliken is just like, all right, you've tested my patience, Palmer. I'm going to be sure to let everyone know about it. And that's where Palmer's is like, I can't give this all my attention right now. There's potential cartel violence in LA, and I got to give Jack Bauer more time. I don't want my best agent getting shot down out of the sky. And so he's got to basically just, he pretty much, he's like, I can't involve Wayne in this. He's got to actually be doing what his job title is. I love him as a brother, but he has really fucked this up for me. And I can't endanger him at the same time. Just like Jack is protective of Chase, President Palmer is like so protective of brother Wayne. He's just like, all right, you're not going to deal with this right now. Oh, he called up his ex. He's like, you owe me. Wild how she responds to it right away. She's like, yes, you did pardon me for my crappy activity against you, so I guess I will help you out. But I still want back in. That's how I like how she does that at the very end. She's like, I want back into your family. I want back into your life. I want to see my kids.
Yeah.
And were you already familiar with some of these other actors, especially Penny Johnson Gerald, who plays Sherry?
Well, I had seen her in something before, but I can't remember where I saw her.
Was it? Yeah, she'd always been a bit part actress and just done a bunch of guest spots. You might have seen her in the Clint Eastwood movie Absolute Power, which coincidentally enough did have her co-starring with her on-screen husband Dennis Haysbert. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, she was always just a bit part actress, and she just kept rising through the ranks and just doing a lot of good TV guest spots like Tour of Duty and Larry. Oh, You might know her from as Beverly on the Larry Saunders Show.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so there you go.
You know, it might have. Yeah, that might have been it.
She's just a delightful actress because she just, I mean, don't get me wrong, she's playing the worst person of all time, but she knows, you can tell even just in the special features for season 2, is like these actors, again, really play ball. They know how to do the backstory. And I've had to explain that to other people, and it's only my sister who had taken theater in high school knew what I was talking about when I explained this to other people. Most people think, you know, actors make it up as they go along. Halfway true. Yes. Most of the time you are making it up as you go along. But the ones who don't bullshit is like, they don't necessarily go method acting. They just, no one has to overdo that. They don't want to take this character home when they, you know, get off work. They basically, you know, you just fill in the dots regardless of what's on the script. And so, I mean, you see it even the most when an actor is promoting a Ridley Scott movie. Ridley will always argue with them. Well, that's not what's intended. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And it's like, well, here's the thing. You got to fill in something based off what you're reading. And whether it's true or not, that's okay. That's just to help the actor get to that point of selling it. That's all it is. Right. It's just like being a salesperson. I got to do enough to make you want to buy my product. And is like, she knows how to justify this villainous. And so, okay, so here's a common complaint. A lot of people are also noting, hey, you know, they didn't feel like they had to bring Sherry back, but they had no problem with bringing Trader Nina back. So what's your take on that whole debacle? Why is everyone fussing over this?
Well, I mean, I think that Nina Myers is possibly one of the best villains in the history of
they had
television.
To bring her back. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's just so diabolical. And she really, you know, she played that role well, and she's such a value asset to the series. Sherry, I think Sherry's character did her job. I think she came in, did her job. You know, you know, I think she went out with a bang, and that was okay.
This is the first time we see President Palmer do a presidential re-election debate. You know, the West Wing was already big on this show, but like they were really embracing this part because, believe it or not, President Palmer on TV magazines was polling as everyone's favorite TV president at that time, like just above Martin Sheen's.
Isn't that funny?
That's so wild because, I mean, they're both good performances, both actors who've been around forever and at the basically the third stage of their career. You know, Dennis Haysbert had already been the voodoo guy, you know, in Major League and a bunch of other recurring shows and key movie roles like Heat and Waiting to Exhale. And here he is, you know, it's like he's at the second stage of his career. And Martin Sheen was basically at the third stage of his career when he did West Wing. So, yeah, I really find the debates really believable. And it is just so wild because he basically does career suicide. And at the same time, it ups his ratings a bit because he's like, I have a presidential emergency. So that works against him in the debate. He basically forfeits the debate. And at the same time, that kind of makes his ratings come into question because everyone's like, oh, but he cares about us. You know, he's got a presidential emergency.
You know, I thought it was a good move for him I thought it was a good move for his character. Of course, it's going to raise its. I would feel the same way if my president did that. You know,
you can't fake something like that. You would know if someone didn't want to do it. Definitely good performance by Jeff Pearson, who you guys might know as one of the main captains on Dexter. He's later on Designated Survivor, but you've seen him on a bunch of other movies and shows. But yeah,
I had not put that together that he was the captain on Dexter until you just said it. Now I'm like, oh yeah.
He's been kind of the go-to. He's just playing congressmen, vice presidents, secretary of defenses.
Yeah,
he's the admiral.
He's in charge.
Oh, totally. Movie-wise, you might have seen him in the movie version of Get Smart, Changeling by Clint Eastwood, as well as the Admiral in Behind Enemy Lines. He's also in the David Mamet film Spartan. But yeah, he was pretty cool here. Oh, that's right. I forgot he was the deputy chief on Nash Bridges and the Senate Minority Leader on the West Wing. So yeah, another bit part, just cool cat who's been around forever.
So the political aspect to the show just gave it another. It just gave it more depth. You know,
It really did.
That was another thing that was going on, and they really did a good job. I thought the writers really did a good job in the way they correlated CTU and the terrorist attack with the political presidency and all that other stuff.
Oh, totally. And it does get a little more surreal because, I mean, just like in other Fox blockbusters like Speed and Die Hard, like they have a lot of reporters playing their real life selves. It's like there's reporter Rick Garcia, and he plays a reporter named Reporter Garcia. It's like they're all various people from just the LA and New York Metroplex, and I like that because it also does kind of, you know, it's better than hiring an actor to try and be like a reporter, you know.
Kiefer Sutherland was talking about how difficult it was to shoot the prison scenes because normally on a, you know, you have 4 or 5 people.
That is such an eye-opening special feature because he saw a news report how many kids are being tossed in here, you know, not given a fair trial. And, you know, he's done 1 or 2 nights in jail doing plenty of drunken bar fights. But he, you know, that's when he was already an older adult and learning the harsh reality of things. But yeah, he was just so disillusioned because it's still a thing. And I remember even Michelle portrayer Rico Iosworth even mentioned is like, my mother had to go to a female's prison once upon a time. So yeah, everybody was kind of having just a harsh coming to reality moment while just doing this season.
Right.
I would say this is probably, before I get to that, he also mentioned on one of the commentary tracks are totally worth it to people who just want a little extra stuff and just want to watch the show but have something else, because whether it's the filmmakers or other castmates, they always have a blast when they're recording a commentary track. And Carlos Bernard was, you know, who plays Tony, was always a jokester. He would always just have something, use a little off-color language. You know, he's pretty much makes all these tracks feel like Mystery Science Theater half the time, and it's really funny. But with these ones in particular, he will give a little bit of extra backstory, and the directors and producers will chime in, and they'll tell you some great stuff, how, you know, the script wasn't clear cut, and, you know, how they incorporated the various helicopter attacks and other stuff as a perfect gotcha moment. And sometimes they would come up with it while doing reshoots and everything. And Kiefer especially hypes on, you know, like we were talking about before, his whole brotherhood bond between Bauer and Chase. That's how the actors basically approached it, because basically Kiefer just really liked how actor Badge-Dell's style. And so he talked about, it's like, I haven't had this much fun, you know, talking with someone over the phone and playing off of them since I worked with Michael Massey's evil villain in season 1. So I was like, okay, nice. That is a big compliment.
Yeah, that is.
And we can't go an episode without talking about Secret Service agent Pierce. He finally.
And now I have seen him in a lot of stuff. I don't know what all I've seen him in, but it's been a lot of different positions and roles.
Totally.
Years. Maybe not before season, maybe not before 24, but after I've watched 24, I'm like, that's Aaron Pierce.
He was a bit part actor. His movies had included Under Siege, Tango and Cash, and Dead and Buried. But, you know, then you might even, he's also one of the Secret Service agents who gets shot at the beginning of Air Force One. So yeah, this was pretty much him building it. He had some other bit part recurring roles around that same time. He was the sheriff on the first 2 seasons of CSI, but he had also just guest starred multiple times on stuff like Star Trek, X-Files, Quantum Leap. And then around the same time, he's shown up as West Wing as one of the staff members. But yeah, he bit into this role because, like, in season 1, he was just kind of a featured recurring character, just helping set up the ransom demands and trying to wiretap, you know, the Dresden terrorist guys. Season 2, he really didn't show up as much, but he just kind of. Oh, that's right. He shows up. Yeah, that's right. He showed up later while defending the president, while he was being, outvoted by his vice president. And season 3, he gets to shine here. He gets pretty much his first real heroic moment. And actor Glenn Morshower is just a delight. You see him all the time posted on Facebook. He, I'm here in the Dallas area, and he does teach acting classes. He just always is a very humble guy. He knows how, again, anyone can make any difference, no matter the scene, no matter how big the role. And, he's appeared in the Transformers movies. So, he's appeared in all kinds of blockbusters. And
he portrays that, in the series 24.
Yeah, and it was never...
Being kind of a background guy, and then as the series went on, he became more and more bigger part of the story.
Yeah, and one thing I thought, if I had my way, he would be in the remaining 3 seasons, because he really would have been interesting to see him just like maybe pop up, like especially when he gets even more heroic. It would have been interesting had he quit this. He technically, I guess, had quit and then been reunited back into the Secret Service staff, but it would have been interesting seeing him maybe become like a private eye or somebody, or just a mercenary who helps out Jack when he goes rogue, because it just seemed like he had an unusual bond. He respected his chain of command, knew the good in him. Here, it's very interesting when, he and the rest of the defense staff don't understand what ball the president is playing, and basically decide, well, we feel like he's in danger, so let's take a vote. They vote to just say, let's put the president in the bunker and leave it to Homeland Security to sort this out. And the president's like, nope, I am staying right here, because the minute I go into any bunker or any other safe haven, everyone else is going to panic in the street. And I don't want a repeat of the panics in the street after season 2 when the, nuke got transported to the middle of the desert, And I'm not doing that again. So it really is interesting how is like we see just basically the rest of the seasons, like those other 2 Secret Service agents who are almost always in the room with Palmer, just following him around. And then, Agent Pierce is just going around and just surveying the room and just saying, as you wish, Mr. President, I totally understand, but let us know, it's like, I'm going to stand by here, in case, no disrespect to you, just in case, you change your mind or some other emergency happens. I want to be able to take a bullet for you.
It seems like he's always playing that good guy role, whether it's a CIA agent, military, or even a dad. I remember he was the dad of...
oh, yeah, yes, on Friday Night Lights, yeah. And
for Landry.
He's had some pretty good, even just guest spot episodes. I really liked his guest spot on Deadwood even. But, yeah, he... Right here, yeah. It's definitely just good to see him just getting more screen time. Yeah, no, but it was just so cool to just see the health aspect to this, just show just all the other agencies working together. Because like you saw it briefly, like, in season 2 where they're coordinating with LAPD, but you never really knew entirely how this whole din of operations sufficed and worked, So I guess let's just dive into the secondary and third tertiary villains, Stephen Saunders and Michael Amador. Played respectively by Paul Blackthorne, another Deadwood native, and voice actor and various Star Trek guest spot actor Greg Ellis. Amador, much like Gaines in season 1, you think he's the main guy calling all the shots, bigwig, career criminal, and then he's like, yeah, but no, he answers to Saunders, who's basically a rejected MI6 guy who everyone at CTU later finds out, hey, I knew Jack Bauer worked with him on his failed, mission to kill Dennis Hopper's, Victor Drazen. So I did like how that there was that callback to season 1, and it shows, NSA file just showing them all posing together,
Right.
And then we have like that other guy who delivers the virus bomb, it's like arms it. And it was it was ricin is like they used to create it. And is like, man, talk about just, again, they do this kind of bioengineering later on in season 5, but yeah, with season 3, this is pretty much the introduction. Is like, yeah, we're not going to keep doing bombs. We got to have viral outbreaks that, engineered health crisis.
And that was something that was new at the time for TV. I mean, I can't think of another show where it was a viral outbreak or anything like that.
And it's really, just pretty much at this point. Sorry if we've skipped over a bunch. There's so much to cover. Basically, by the second part of this season, Jack's not taking anything for granted. He has already tried to avenge many things. Tony gets attacked, survives, and comes back to work, from the gunshot by one of the, cartel guys.
Kyle Singler, right? Kyle Singler was a drug dealer.
Yeah, Carl was the kidnapped drug dealer, and Tony got shot and injured in the crossfire while trying to apprehend him at the mall. But yeah, then you can also tell that Jack is also kind of, I don't want to say necessarily avenged, but he feels like he has so much blood on his hands. So many people who needlessly got killed during the prison break that he orchestrated, as well as the lawyer guy or the prison supervisor who's Jack was using as an ally to bring down the Salazars. Remember, he got shanked by his cohorts in the prison. So yeah, he is and he basically almost had a fit while hearing that info. So he's like, at this point, he basically just, he's already killed Nina, finally, avenging his wife's death, saving his daughter, even killing her in the exact same place where she was originally trying to escape CTU. Some criminals just don't learn. And
That's funny.
He's already in review. They want to basically strip away his badge. They just think it's overkill to, it's like someone kill a traitor who, this was already a bad idea to bring her back for processing. It's like, yeah, well, no, she should have been killed and left for dead in Mexico, but he wanted to bring her back.
I enjoyed, more so than Jack killing Nina Myers, the headbutt to the face was just as enjoyable for me.
Oh, totally. And this is a good actress, Sarah Clark.
She had died. I wish she was still around because she was such a good, character to the show.
Great actress. Well, unfortunately, all the millennial teensters will like her from Twilight. I don't watch that crap. I don't care for it. But she was really good on other shows like Bosch. It was her most recent role. And she's actually married to the actor who played George in the previous seasons. But yeah, it was interesting here because at this point, I mean, just in her interrogation, like Tony decides I'm going to interrogate her. And I love how, his current spouse, Michelle's like, are you sure? You sure you can handle it? I'm going to be supervising it just in case, you do go too far, even though I trust you as a friend and as my husband. But it is wild how she is just like, she sees that glance. She knows instantly, connects 1 and 1. And she's like, oh, I know you used to desire me and all that. She's saying all this nasty shit while knowing damn well.
Yes. And the shot of her where she's sitting in the interrogation room by herself and she looks up at the camera, I mean, that's just eerie,
It's just so morbid. And
yeah, she knows exactly what's going on. She knows exactly what to expect.
She's like, I used to do this for a living. You guys aren't fooling anybody, especially me. And she's like, and by the way, I'm not going to tell you anything, and you can threaten all kinds of death penalties. I'll find a way to escape. And then by that point, this also introduces, so this is so weird. They introduce us to Johnson, like in like an earlier episode, as the main go-to truth serum guy. And then they don't mention him again until season 4 briefly. And then it's like, they introduce this one guy is like, not Jesse, but there's like some other guy who we see in this in the following season basically being the head of Truth Serum before they give it to someone else midway through season 4 for 6. But yeah, it's like I love how his dishonest reaction is like, I got no control over her. She is rejecting all of this serum and basically trying to commit suicide.
That's crazy.
Going into arrest. And it is interesting though too how it's like you don't expect it. There's no foreshadowing of it, but you know that anything can happen at any time, so it doesn't feel like a cheap still. So yeah, let's go back to Saunders. When he's revealed, I really got a total Alan Rickman, even just James Bond, just kind of villain feel from him. But
it's funny you mention James Bond because I would have thought of Michael Amador as more the James Bond type villain.
I both got definitely a Bond feel from both of them. And, Greg Ellis is such a good voice actor. With this role, I mean, he pretty much just infused just that whole side of ruthlessness and no shame. And I love how when they first break into his whole thing, he's basically selling drugs and everything. And they just take out all his various guards and gain the upper hand. And he's like, "You have federal agents. You're not going to do damn thing to me." And or again, just like the drug dealers, is like Jack does it again. He's like, "Chase," and Chase instantly cuts him, and he's just like, "Oh, you bastard, I'll get my lawyer on you."
And so I think one of the biggest scenes in this season, and maybe one of the biggest scenes in this series, is when Saunders puts a hit on Ron Chappelle.
When Saunders shows his true face and he's like, "I know what you did to Amador. He's expendable. He was always full of himself and not keeping a close eye for the authorities. So yeah, you can have him. He's not going to tell you shit. And I know he's not going to tell you shit because, whoop-de-doo, they're escorting Amador to be processed, and he pretty much the biggest screw up where they got to start over. And realistically, they would be too late and not get this done in time. But, Jack's determination wins all. But I love how they try to basically, Jack decides he's the king of cat and mouse. And this definitely is where it kind of takes a Patriot Games Heat kind of perspective. He's like, let's let Amador go. And, Saunders is on to him. He expects, him to not tell him where the henchman who has the viral outbreak and other supplies is. And they want to, at this point, they just wanted him to lead them back to Saunders. They know he's going to show his hand and be ruthless. And so they're just like, Jack does the whole, "I don't have enough evidence, have a nice day." And Amador totally buys it. And so he goes back to his car, but lo and behold, Saunders has sent a guy to meet him, and he happens to have a car bomb. Neither of them clearly knew that there was anything in it because, they both have a what the fuck look on their face, and they blow up in the smithereens. And so it's just so funny. Jack has this recurring line of "damn it," that's his catchphrase, or "we're running out of time." And that he has the best "damn it" there. Damn it! Just the way he enunciates it. I'm like, that would be a total what the hell is going on here from me. Performances but all, but let's go back to Saunders. Saunders, again, just at this point, again, everyone is just tired. Tony's basically kind of resting a bit and, just being cozy at his office while just thinking aloud. Michelle's basically running things. She's got, dead eyes. And Kim is basically scarred for life and having to pose. I love it. They basically obtain Saunders' daughter, who basically wants to actually get back together with her dad, but also fears for what would happen if she doesn't cooperate with the feds. And very well played by Alexandra Lyndon. She's been on a bunch of other stuff, Star Trek Enterprise, NCIS, Private Practice. And I saw that she had like a reliable character actress, and she was pretty well cast here. And I thought that's pretty much the only good thing Kim does this season, when she has to pose as I think Saunders' daughter was Jane, so she has to pose as Jane's double to.
She finds her purpose in the season.
Yeah, she finally finds her purpose, and of course the op nearly goes bad. So Jack is instantly just ripping everyone a new one and saying, "Kim, go back to the desk. Dad, it's all right. No, go back to the desk." As we're progressing, things have gone really awkward for the President Palmer family. Sherry has tried to blackmail Milliken. Right. I have to say, that actor from other roles, Albert Hall. You might have seen him in Willie Dynamite, but I loved him as the judge on The Practice, and he was also he's the boat captain in Apocalypse Now. So this is no holds barred. I mean, everything that you thought could go wrong went even worse. Is like Milliken, is the campaigner guy, and Sherry just spooks him so great and denies him his pills that she ends up killing him. So
Right. Yeah.
and I loved how a detective comes in, and they're very questionable about this. They even go to the president's office, and he's like, I did not have any conversation. Totally lies to them. But also, here's a throwback. Who would have guessed that, they cast Tony Todd, who later played, everyone else knows him as Worf's brother on Star Trek and the Night of the Living Dead remake and Platoon. But he later plays, General Juma on season 7. But I like how the actor really plays this guest star here. He's really just not buying anything about the widow. He's like, why were the cameras to your, house turned off on the day your husband died? That's typically foul play. And
It's typically shady.
yeah, and apparently the writers had previously worked with Todd on Angel and X-Files, so they just remembered him. He was just in the playing cards of guest star actors, and they were like, let's bring him in, for this role. And he said that apparently in an interview too. He's like, yeah, they remembered me from that X-Files episode I did. Season 1, I had the weird warts on my face. But I do like how he plays this Detective Norris guy, because it's like, he can't figure her out. He's like, is she crazy? Is she have a vendetta? Does he have money? Because she hasn't accessed his, bank account. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And it's so funny. He's clearly an experienced detective with the body language and how he's worded. And he never would have suspect, oh, there's adultery going on. And lo and behold, it's with, again, the president's brother's who's his chief of staff. I'll also go back a little bit. I love the connection. Again, you get a total James Bond connection, because I love the MI6 connection, how is like they have to meet at their office in LA, and there's that helicopter attack. They find one of Saunders' old flames, and they're like, I love how much like with Nina getting dressed, is like, there's no such thing as privacy. She's like, I'll be in, here dressing up, and Jack's like, I'll watch you. You're not going anywhere. Good trust.
One thing about all the offices, they really did a great job of making CTU look like it had a very, almost a futuristic feel to it at that time. It was very feng shui, I guess.
Totally feng shui. They mentioned in later seasons that they would do a good job of making sure, to use different areas to make them look like different parts of the place. But yeah, also the head art director also would do a lot of reshoots and everything. He's now becoming an assistant director. Again, they make it become a character in its own right, just like the West Wing, title place, looks like you were in some kind of professional office. And I mean, that's what any good set should do. You should actually feel like this is a set.
I mean, it seems like, every few seasons they're at a different place or something, or they've.
It made sense for them to have to make it look different. It's like, it's been a year, it should look different. And for a show and everything, and for a fictional world that you're building, you should actually make it look different. It's even more chaotic here. Remember, presidential candidate John Keeler, obviously we can figure he's a Republican because President Palmer's a Democrat, but it's interesting here how he decides to start using Sherry. Sherry decides she's had it with Palmer. She hasn't gotten anything out of it. She basically, her tricks aren't working on him. So she basically decides to not blackmail, but just give some free information to his opponent. Okay, fine. You're not going to let me see my kids. You're not going to win the presidency. It's like, man, petty as petty comes.
Right.
And Keeler's loving it. He's like, hey, is this true what you're telling me? All this messed up stuff? Tell me more. I might make you part of my candidacy. And then he can't figure her out because then she, just says, oh, I don't want to be part of your agency. I'll let you know what I'm interested in, and just stomps out the door. So let's cut back to the virus stuff. So the rest of the season is mainly find Saunders and then find the final henchman who he's been mentioning the whole season, and you only see for like one final episode. And the only line of dialogue he has is "no" as they're trying to disarm the bomb. But yeah, I love how basically they're doing a subway lockdown. Gael, the other guy who's been their go-between, has to sacrifice himself, and they have to honor his memory there, is like, and I love Jack's line, is like 3,000 people are going to be dead by midnight. 5,000 more will also be dead if we don't get this thing under control at the hotel, lock down the guy who's trying to get away at the subway in LA, close it down, deal with all the other, people who aren't playing ball. And I really did feel like there, again, the stakes were well raised, and then lo and behold, Saunders sends some henchmen to kidnap Michelle, and so then all bets are off. Now Tony makes this a personal mission and says, okay, fine, I'll give you your daughter back, but you harm my wife with that knife on that video, then it's on, Buster. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
You were thinking of Gael. Did you think he was going to be kind of shady from the get-go?
No, not at all. I thought so in the first 2 episodes, but then when he made it pretty clear, it's like, no, I was just doing my cover, and Kim came into the room where I was recording from, and I figured she'd be a security risk. and then they just 24
as a series, it was always really good at that misdirection stuff. They would have these characters that would be
red herrings,
massively developed, and then they would show you that, well, maybe this character has their own agenda.
Right.
This character that comes to, they did that with Mike Novick, Nina Myers.
Yeah, Raymond. Mike has his breaking point where he has his own agenda, and before you see him later on is like you kind of forgot about his presence in those 2 seasons, but you had a lot of the same kind of gray people who is like, their description is just beyond being able to sum up. It's just so in the gray area. The writers knew what they created, but I mean, the writing is also on the wall, and at the same time, you still got a little element to their persona you want to figure out. And
I always really enjoyed his character because I thought he had such a good moral, ethical value. But as the series goes on, you do kind of see him have a little bit of his own agenda coming out, and some of those normal.
Yeah, we can kind of assume.
Question. As a fan, it's horrible because you're like, Mike, what are you doing? But like I said earlier, it just makes for really good TV. And the fact that they were able to do that with Charles Logan, Wayne Palmer, it's what really kept viewers interested. And I think it lent to the successful run that the series had.
Yeah. Didn't you think that Wayne was going to be forced to resign eventually?
There was a
brief chat talk.
An issue. Yeah.
Because Palmer is like, you are doing more bad to my presidency after offering you this whole seat. We're going to play the recap for those rest of you who want to see this. Overall, pretty solid season.
This is a weaponized strain. The virus has been engineered to kill more rapidly. If the virus initiates by the end of the first week, 9% of Los Angeles County will be infected.
That's over 1 million people.
And those people will die within 24 hours of infection.
We want the release of Ramon Salazar. If you refuse to comply, the virus will be unleashed.
Open the cell blocks now. Move!
Sir, everything that's happened today, from the infected body at health services to Ramon Salazar's prison break, has been part of an elaborate sting operation.
I set up this deal so my government could take control of the virus and destroy it. All we want is the virus. Just put the cylinder down slowly. We do not have the virus. The cylinder Ramon was carrying was rigged for the bomb.
Here's the situation. Stephen Saunders is now in possession of the Cordelia virus. Our only lead is Nina Myers.
How much more of this you want into her, Nina?
I think this is about it.
Nina tried to commit suicide. Where is she now?
Drop the gun. You won't kill me. Nina, damn it.
You don't have any more useful information, do you, Nina?
I do.
No, you don't.
What about the virus?
I think we got a high probability target.
What is it?
The Chandler Plaza Hotel on Wilshire Boulevard.
We have to impose a total quarantine. As people realize what's going on, there'll be widespread panic.
Hello, Jack. I need you to put me in touch with a friend of yours.
The man in possession of the Cordelia virus has demanded to speak with you. I think you're going to have to give in to his demands.
You are no longer in control of your country.
What do you want?
There's a man named Ryan Chappelle, regional director of CTU. I want him killed.
My God, Jack!
He's proven he'll use the virus. The president had no choice. I'm sorry we let you down, Ray. God forgive me.
How long am I supposed to let him hold this country hostage?
Looks like Saunders has a daughter. You think I'm playing a game here with you? You have no idea how far I'm willing to go to acquire your cooperation. You're completely surrounded. The only way you're getting out of this thing alive is coming through the front door with your hands on your head.
That's just not exactly true, Jack.
See that? Saunders has a helicopter. Call in air support now.
And now on to season 4 of the show.
On the first day, he saved the president. On the second day, a city. On the third, a nation. But nothing could prepare Jack Bauer for the threat that lies ahead. Hang on. The thrill ride of the season.
I want a visual of the location now.
Is about to get started all over again.
I can't do this without you. Are you with me?
Fox Sunday.
We have terrorists on U.S. soil.
Television's greatest thrill ride is finally back.
I need your help to stop them. Are you with me?
Season 4 of 24 grabs you and never lets go.
Make no mistake, this country is under attack.
4 stars.
You try that again, and I will kill you.
The series that reinvented suspense has become an addiction.
I need more time.
We don't have more time.
Be there from the very beginning. No! 24, the 2-night premiere event, begins at 8, 7 Central, Fox Sunday.
Season 4 is set 18 months later after season 3, begins at 7 a.m. in the morning, and Jack must save the lives of his new boss, Secretary of Defense James Heller, played by William Devane of Rolling Thunder and West Wing fame, and Heller's daughter, Audrey Raines, played by Kim Raver, who you might have seen on the EMT show Third Watch. Jack is romantically involved with Audrey and is shocked to see them both kidnapped by sleeper cell terrorists. The cell leader, Habib Marwan, is played by Arnold Vosloo of the Mummy fame, who in Hard Target, and he uses this as a disguise to launch further attacks against America. Jack is forced to use unorthodox methods and results in long-term consequences for both him and the U.S. And this is the one that introduces us to Field Ops Director Curtis Manning, played by Roger Cross, who you might have seen on First Way, Chronicles of Riddick, and later on Dark Matter and Continuum. And it also introduces us to CTU head Bill Buchanan, played by James Morrison from Space Above and Beyond. So, yeah. Take it away from there. So you again had seen Seth, like all these seasons in order?
Yeah, I watched them in order.
Okay, Nate. Yeah, this for me, I thought this was going back to everything awesome about season 2, and it kind of, from this point on, I think this determined really just the main gist of the show. Like, it was really comfortable once again, just like season 2 and 3 had introduced multiple villains, but this kind of went back to the whole Mr. President, we got a deadly encounter,
right?
That season 1 had, and just stopping multiple kidnappings. But I kind of prefer these vast amount of villains the most, because you go the first 4 episodes and you still don't even have the main culprit, until like halfway through.
Yeah, this is a little bit different than the previous season we just spoke about, in that it sticks with the main villain, the primary villain, all the way through the season. And so that's a little change up, but I thought it was a little new flavor for this season as opposed to what we saw in the previous season.
Yeah, like season 2 was just better detailed, even though you didn't really remember the Middle Eastern guys, and just because, spoiler, it was a government coup and a bunch of oil lobbyists who were the main villains. But
right. The big one, like you said, he's played by the guy that played the Mummy, much bigger actor, and so he brings a little more, depth to that role. And so he is more memorable than you said. Some of the Middle Eastern guys in the season 2 were not as memorable. This guy, you remember him.
Oh, totally. And by this point, Jack is just like full blown like Rambo James Bond.
Yeah, he's starting to get a little mean. Jack's starting to get a little mean.
Yeah, the bunker rescue is just a great just way to start off the season by episode 6, and I love how just everything is just tooth and nail, just against the grind. He's had like some other guy who's overseeing him. He gets killed while he's pursuing the terrorist. Jack's playing for it. The main gal who's in charge, Erin, you think, she's played by that, what was her name? She was on La Femme Nikita, and that's why she was cast in the role. But already we're off to a better start.
Alberta Watson.
Yes, she unfortunately passed away after a long-term battle with cancer, but she was a really good actress, and she's kind of much like, I remember a few fans noting how she and Vice President Daniels in later seasons kind of have a very gray morale to them. You don't even know how to classify them because they're just very troubled behind the scenes people, just very troubled people. And she's got this, again, daughter who's depressed and on suicide watch.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that was kind of forced a little bit.
It was, especially with yeah, and who are the med techs? Like, is no one watching her?
Yeah, that's just, I don't know about that.
That was where, I mean, don't get me wrong, this is definitely where by this point it is still in kind of soap operaville a bit.
Right.
And
but now a lot of people consider this to be one of the best seasons.
Yeah, well, it might have changed. I see people bitch about it now, and I think it's just because they just don't like the whole back and forth, Jack, Audrey,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think it's made up for just how, again, just how the whole thing shockingly ends, and just you still are pretty attached to just wanting to know who is the main villain, and the henchmen are just way more memorable. Because when you get to season 5 through 7, it then just kind of became just who's Jack going to use as a body shield versus who's actually the diabolical, guy behind it. And don't get me wrong, season 5 definitely has a cool villain, and season 7 I think has some underrated villains, but it seems like, season 6 and 8, I will say, I really don't like how every even numbered season had to have a Middle Eastern cult. That got old instantly. Why couldn't it be some Serbians, war criminals, or some actual, I don't know, why couldn't it even done Law and Orderville, where it's just rip something from the headlines and make something of it and then outline it instead of just war on terror. And at times, I don't know, I think at this point this show was just trying to just kind of, for both as better or for worse, it was trying to rival everything else on the air at that point. And this was technically, I think, actually the first, I saw a part of the pilot back in the day when it first aired, just because it was just, I wasn't watching it, but I just saw it on in the background. I'm like, whoa, I just saw an explosion, what's going on? And it was on after a sports game, and that kind of just became the norm for anything on Fox. Just any hit show, it's going to air after a sports game.
Now that you're done with your other male types, now for some more male testosterone viewing.
Right. If you haven't had enough of guys hitting other guys, you can. And I mean, I've tested this again multiple times with grandparents and folks and just other friends, and it never fails. It's impossible. I think this is the best. Okay, so let me get your thoughts. Is this the best or least best premiere? Because I mean, he just rages in, and the minute you actually dig Chloe this time, having seen her previously kind of be annoying the last season. You get her off to a better start here. You're introduced to virtually everyone who's the main techs, the totally refurbished CTU, and then he just flat out barges into the interrogation room. We know instantly the minute he gets word that there's the Secretary of State and his daughter are going to be Fred, and he just barges into that room, disarms the guard, takes the other guy's gun, and forces one of the interrogators out, and then just like proceeds to shoot the main suspect, who you might recognize as one of the main bad guys in Iron Man a few years later. It's just like, you can't take your eyes off the screen. He's like, yeah, he's back to rule breaking, Jack.
You're like, I'm going to watch this, is what you're like. I wouldn't necessarily say it was the worst or the best, because I feel like every season grabbed you in a way that made you want to continue watching the show.
That's fair. Oh,
it
totally.
was a non-stop adrenaline ride, and that's why it was so successful, I think. I think the viewers, it was something that was not the norm for TV at that time. Nobody had ever produced anything of this caliber, and people just got a hold of it and ran with it.
I totally concur. I think even Howard Gordon, if anything, he had learned from his time on the X-Files. He, and X-Files launched so many good writers. I mean, just look at Breaking Bad,
Right.
That Gilligan guy who launched it. I mean, but I think Howard went to the same kind of textbook of, you're only as good as a show as long as you keep someone's attention. You can figure out any flaws.
People really knew how to leave you at the end of the show. You wanted to be like, I got to come back next week, or I got to watch the next episode. I got to see what's going to happen. They really were good at dropping those cliffhangers on you within the last 5 minutes of the show.
Always. And more or less, I mean, even when there was an unlikable character on screen, you wanted to see, you'd feel sorry when they got killed. You'd even, again, like you said, it was relentless. And, every show always has at least like 1 or 2 bad seasons, let alone a few bad episodes. And, again, you can't say there wasn't any thought put into any episode. I really think I know the co-creator Joel Sunau in a commentary track did mention how he hired Louis Lombardi as the other tech, Edgar, because he remembered him on The Sopranos, and he remembered Curtis Manning, portrayer Roger Cross from when he worked on The Commish. So yeah, he decided to just bring basically everybody, much like how he was kind of just going for the same kind of grit that he had on other shows he worked on, like Miami Vice and Equalizer. He was just pretty much still in his comfort zone, getting other people who he had seen in other projects. Like, he did say that he hired Mary Lynn as Chloe because he remembered her from the Paul Thomas Anderson film Punch Drunk Love. So,
So you're talking about Curtis Manning and Edgar Stiles here.
Yeah, Edgar, you don't know what to think about at first. You're like, is he going to be?
They fit real well with the the CTU cast that we had become accustomed to. They fit into that domain very well. And this season started with some new characters, but it seemed like the Edgar Stiles and Curtis Manning were really the only ones that didn't eventually kind of trickle away. They kind of held their own and were able to, play out.
Yeah. One thing that pissed me off is they never mentioned Curtis or Edgar again after those, 2 to 3 seasons. And I was just like, but those guys were so key, but yet their presence was still felt in the same weird way. Yeah, I mean.
Well, it kind of goes back to Chase Edmonds. I mean, once he was done, he was done. He served his role in the season we just spoke about, and then that was kind of, you never hear much out of him again.
Well, yeah, and fair enough. And I mean, that goes also kind of just with the grit of this, because like you say, I mean,
it's just a little tough.
Yeah, any time, too much time spent dreading just loses the audience. It's just too much. And I mean, you even look at some of the deleted scenes, even when they're good for any of these seasons, and you see, even if you find one that's good, you understand, again, the plot must go on. And, any dead time, you've lost the audience. So, the editing must be rapid.
I agree.
You can't lose their attention. You can't get too melodramatic. You got to just keep giving someone something to do. And I think this is kind of where, midway through the season, you're even introduced to kind of a Blackwater-esque company. And I really dug how at first they're going after a guy who has basically a crooked government worker, already shady. And then, he's forged identities and other shit. He's even trying to make a getaway. He gets killed. And then they have to break into another company. And, Jack has to fight his way out there. And he has some great fight scenes here. You can't tell what's a double or what's him. And it's just all well choreographed. And by this time, fun fact, midway after like the first few episodes, they switched to a different stunt coordinator. It was Jeff Cadiente, who you may know as the longtime best friend and photo and stunt double of Brandon Lee. What did you think about just kind of like when they get into just like all these other kind of private military organizations and other government contractors that kind of
I
went back to season 2?
I thought it was maybe something that was a little bit different. There was a lot going on in this season. I mean, you got the train bombing and people were stealing stealth jets and just everything. Then you got to worry about them launching a nuclear missile. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it seems like every time CTU or Jack or the government seems like they're going to be able to fix one problem, then something else is coming up. And so I thought that really helped the progression of the villain in this season, because man, this dude is just into everything. He's got his hands on multiple aspects throughout the entire season.
I totally concur, and it was great seeing Tony Plana, who you might know as the voice of Grim Fandango, the video game from years ago, and usually you see him often. You might remember him from Free Amigos. He was like the main guy who took the Secretary of State hostage in the bunker, Omar. And once again, he's not even the main villain, but you think he is because he's in the first few episodes.
There's a little
everything.
A little misdirection there.
A great distraction. You might have seen him in other movies and shows like Nixon, Romero, and.
By the way, you mentioned Nixon there. How much does Charles Logan remind you of Nixon?
Yeah, I mean, he even looks like him. So he
looks like him with those big jaws, big cheekbones.
The way he squints his eyes, and it's just so wild how Jeff Pearson, is once again playing John Keeler, and I mean, it was just so funny. They were still getting a little notes on what they could or couldn't show on TV, and one note they got is you can't show the president's plane actually crashing on TV. No. And they're like, I mean, so yeah, and I remember just the guys behind the scenes were like, holy fuck, come on, this is not a documentary. We are not actual terrorists. And they got a bunch of notes like from like, I don't think feds, but just like standards in Parents Television Council. They were just like, nope, can't show it. And so they had to be very creative. Is like they had to show, pretty much lean on President Keeler talking to his son, Kevin, and just their final moments, and then just not even show the plane, just cut to black, and you hear an explosion. You're like, whoa, what actually happened? And sure enough, yeah, they're swearing in now Vice President Logan, and you're like, you just know from the start, just his whole demeanor is he's just determined to get results. He cares very little in the actual merit of it all, and is like he is already very unimpressed with kind of doing the president's bidding. And so, like you say, it's just the Nixon label works so well later on. And I think I did see, of course, just everyone saying, yeah, it's pretty obviously Nixon. But I mean, it was even more interesting just seeing how he's not even just prepared for what he has to do, Yeah,
well, he's a real big character throughout the series, but here we're just kind of seeing him get his feet wet, I guess. And he's uncertain of himself. He really develops throughout the series, but here it's very early for him, and this kind of sets the tone for what he is to become.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I mean, I also dug how it was Kim Bauer free. I was just like, thank God.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know some people said they stopped watching just because for whatever reason they wanted to follow her around. I'm just like, she never had a purpose on the show except just getting kidnapped and, doing just such dumb stuff. And so for me, that was a relief. I know some people considered her as eye candy, but I'm just like, come on, guys.
That's not why you're watching the show.
Mm-hmm.
There are other shows if that's what you're into.
Oh, totally. I can't mention this without also mentioning Lana Parrilla as Sarah Gavin. At first, she's kind of a disruptive, co-worker who just hates Chloe.
A lot of misdirection with her character.
Yeah, totally. Because, she's basically the coworker no one wants to work with. And then at the same time, you find out, oh, well, but now she's being set up by the actual mole. And it was just so good what they had the mole being on there. I won't give it away, but I will along the way mention one of the cast members who did play one of those moles. But she's known now as like the evil queen on Once Upon a Time, but I think anyone who goes even back further, they might remember her from being on other shows like the short-lived crime show Boomtown and Spin City. She was in season 5 as one of the workers, but she's one of those other Latina actresses who you just don't even. She reads as someone who you're unsure who what her agenda is.
Exactly, and that's what kind of, you're always trying to figure that out early on. You're like, what is going on with this girl? Something's fishy here with her.
Yeah, and it's just so funny because like she's the most vocal about how she hates the new CTU head Aaron, and then just the other people that they bring in. It's just so funny how Ronnie you think is going to be the main Chappelle that season who just bosses everyone around, and lo and behold, he's dead by episode 2. He's played by Sean Doyle, who you might know as one of the main guys now on The Expanse, and he's like the go-to for appearing in Canadian crime and sci-fi and horror shows. And much like I really dug how again, what really made this really well balanced was even just showing Jonathan Boot as the Araz kid, Baruz. He, that was just so earth-shattering to just see him be again,
as good as he was.
Just the terrorist family, is like, we don't pick who our parents are, but if they were anti-American terrorists who live in America, what would you do? And
good internal conflict right there with the storyline.
Yeah, I mean, because in the past, any family member of a bad guy, was almost always used as a leverage or as a body shield. We're dead by again at the end of the episode, and to see him just show up and he just instantly senses something is wrong. So well played, Navi, the main evil dad, because again, you think he's often the main bad guy.
The main guy.
The main henchman.
They brought a lot to this season, I thought, and Dina Araz, her eyes, man, they were piercing. I thought, man, she is just one evil chick.
Yeah, very well played by Cherie Angalouche, and she's also on The Expanse coincidentally. But yeah, I've seen her in everything: House of Saddam, X-Men Free, House of Sand and Fog, and she's just instantly recognizable anytime you see her in something because she has flat out just
killed it.
Well, totally. She's been in just so many internationally well-known movies, and just flat out just dynamite performer. you instantly
The
know.
dynamic of the whole Ireland's family brought a lot to the storyline, I thought, and well done by them.
Nothing was safe either, and you could tell that they were just also trying to just show just kind of a breaking point. And I like how they play around with that for a while. And it's like, will she do the right thing and just give away her husband? But it's it's just like,
right. I felt that too.
So I really dig when Jack finally, again, is checking out, along with some of the other agents. You get some of the same recurring guys as well as ones who just were around for like 3 episodes and then are capped. I like how he Audrey and a bunch of her other friends, are getting help and checking out like he gets an ally in the most unlikely form, which is Audrey's, estranged husband, Paul, played by James Frain, who you might know from the Tudors and White Queen and Orphan Black. I've seen him in just all kinds of movies and shows, and I liked how he didn't even have to his British accent sticks out a bit here and there, but I just liked how it's like they already implied that, he was the handsome overseas guy, the businessman, and he just was never there for his, lovely wife. But Jack pretty much just puts it aside. He's like, hey, I'm not here to, beat you up or anything. I'm just I just want you to know she's mine now. I took care of her while you didn't give her your time. But it's just so wild how he has connections, and he's just like, after suspecting him, he's like, no, I did business with someone who happens to be shady, but I am not a terrorist, dude. I don't got time to blow America up. And so
So the relationship with Audrey and Jack is obviously built in for the female audience. But how did you like that? What did you think about it?
It's not the most cliche, but there are some in-between moments where you're just like, good grief, could they give her anything else to say later on? Jack, just stop saying his name 500 times an episode. So it starts out okay, and you tolerate it for this season, but then there are, I think what gets even more, I'll get to another love triangle that gets to be just annoying later on, but I'll let you weigh in on it.
Oh, on my own question?
Yeah, sorry.
I thought Audrey's character was okay. Like I said, I knew what they were doing there. They are trying to have a romantic aspect to the show to garner a greater audience geared towards a female audience. And so I understood what they were doing. As far as me personally, it wasn't something that I thought was overkill. I didn't think they played it too hard. They adjusted it well in terms of the story.
Yeah, because Terry was the wife who you just remembered as someone who Jack was estranged from, and then you felt so sorry after her annoying ass got capped, and then
and
Kate,
if you're a Jack fan, you want to see, because there are moments in here where you're finally seeing that Jack has some happiness early on in this season. Now later in the season, not so much, but early in the season, you're seeing some moments where Jack, finally has some happiness, and you're happy for that. And that's if you're a Jack fan, and I'm assuming most people that are going to watch 24 are.
You'd be surprised. I've seen some people watch this and never got behind him, and I'm just like, so, I mean, what are
you watching?
Yeah, I mean, I at least got to find a character interesting, regardless of whether or not I personally like him. He was intriguing in that he had a breaking point, and he knew that he could end up just probably screwing this up again. Exactly. I will mention this. It was so weird how, again, there was that prologue movie which shows the opening suspect and showed why he quit CTU to begin with before temporarily being reinstated for this. And it was just so funny because it was like the only time there had been some near R-rated language in an episode where he just says, "I can get my own fucking job, Aaron, thank you very much." And it was just so funny because it set up how the main terrorist suspect at first got over the border.
And that's more, that's more the Kiefer Sutherland we're all familiar with.
Yeah, you definitely got the bad boy attitude in that brief clip. And it's definitely my personal favorite of the prologues because it does actually serve something. And yes, you get that awesome F-bomb, which should have been on this show had it been on cable TV. But yeah, they kind of screwed the pooch on that one because it was like only on like the UK DVD set. It wasn't on any of the US ones after being promoted. So I wondered why, but whatever.
I hate it when they do those regional things. I don't like that.
Yeah, and it's like it would have even given it more value for its buck instead of just, oh, by the way, that thing, and it's just, I've been on various independent movies, and so this was just kind of like, again, just the equivalent of I gave my whole life to something that no one will ever see, and so great, thanks for nothing. Well, what's your take on James Heller? William Devane, has already been in plenty of conspiracy stuff like Family Plot and Marathon Man, and I did not expect to see him in this kind of role.
Right, he does have a lot of credibility.
Playing both Kennedys, playing all kinds of.
Right. He's got a ton of credibility coming into a show like this, and he sticks with the show. He sticks with it.
I was so glad he did because he seemed like the only politician with some gutsy feelings. He felt like he was John McCain.
Right, and he played the role very, very well.
Yeah, and you buy him because much like Air Force One, they do establish he has like seen his military action prior to becoming, a senator and then Secretary of Defense. So you buy that he's able to help Jack escape.
But he's got that voice to him, and he's got all those little facial gestures that he can make that really sells whatever point he's trying to get across.
Yeah, you feel the sweat in the room, especially when he's enduring some torture. It's just like anyone else would have been like, sure, I'll give you the codes or whatever else you need. And he's just like, kiss my ass. He like rips up a treaty before even just reading it, but they don't even do it all that cliche. Like he just flat out just doesn't even give it a second moments of thought. And they're like, and they're doing everything. They're like, we will kill your daughter in front of you. And he's like, no, you won't. Because you need me.
Yeah, and it seems like that guy can pull off. He can pull stuff like that off. Where normally it would be cliche, you don't get that with him.
Well, and that's just it. The filmmakers also, like, I really dug a lot of the filmmakers they attached to this season. They got Brian Spicer, who had worked on all kinds of things, Hunter, Power Rangers, and the McHell's Navy movie version. And he was all about, again, just for the next few seasons, he works on seasons 4 through 6, and his whole deal was, just always just he was following John Cassar's lead. Just we are the Alfred Hitchcock's Die Hard. We gotta just the minute we get too predictable or we don't have any just people doubting other people, the viewer doubting who what's really going on, then we've already lost too many viewers. I will even intercede. I really dug comedian Aisha Tyler working against type. I think this really got her more dramatic roles. She was kind of on Ghost Whisperer around this same time. Remember she played Marianne. Yeah, Marianne Taylor, who's like an ex-flame of Curtis. And I like how Curtis, again, this helps show how he's kind of a hardcore kind of Jack, where he just does not, when a relationship is over, it's over. And it's just so funny how Marianne, you don't know what her actual agenda is. And Curtis is like, doesn't matter. You're a temporary tech. If you're misbehaving, I will find out. And I don't want to give away her plot twist, but do you think this gave her more dramatic roles later on, especially with Criminal Minds later on?
Yeah, anytime you can get a role in a season, in a successful series like 24. I mean, everybody knows about 24. Even if they haven't seen it, they've heard about it.
Oh, totally.
And I think that it has a lot of credibility out there. And so anytime an actor or actress is able to pull off a role in a series like that, I think it gives them a tremendous amount of credibility moving forward in their career.
Yeah, more or less, it was great showing it even to my folks back in the day because, she had just done Friends. She got to date both Ross and Joey. That was funny. And my father recognized her from Talk Soup, which especially she was on a bunch of the sports segments, years before Joel McHale was doing it,
Nobody did it like Joel McHale.
No, but I mean, she was just great because she's just very just naturally witty. And so when I saw that, she when Whose Lines It Anyway came back and she was the host, I was like, I can live with that. She's just naturally kind of funny.
Right, yeah.
And it's like she's the voice on Archer.
You don't see that in her role here at all.
No, not at all. And she had auditioned for like so many other roles, and it was just so funny how coincidentally she won out a role that Michelle Dessler portrayer Rico Iosworth was like trying to get. So like she got one guest spot on CSI the same season, but Aisha got to be in at least like 5 episodes that same season. And so she came on over here, and lo and behold, they brought Michelle back, and then we got again Marianne by Aisha that same season here.
But don't you love that? Don't you love it when like a comedian can branch over and do a role like this? It reminds me of Vince Vaughn. Vince Vaughn started out in comedy, very successful in comedy, but here at the latter part of his career, he's branched over into doing more serious roles, even some action films.
Yeah, he's been
just nails them.
Been doing a bunch of the lately, playing cops or troubled dads. So yeah, I mean, every comedian kind of has that breaking point, and I think after a while, people got to remember even they get tired of telling the same restroom humor. After a while, they want something that's a little different, if not cleaner. And we really get behind Chloe this season. It's like she is like, this determines the whole rest of the series, with just her just making light or off-color humor, just nervously. And it's just so wild how, again, we're talking comedians, is like she kind of had to teach herself how to become a deeper actress just on the show. And it's just like John Kazar in those interviews is like, this is a very patient director. He just always tries to, use enough takes and everything. And he didn't know why she was just freaking out. It's like, you're doing fine. It's just like, really? Do you think I'm a good actress? And like, we wouldn't hire you if we didn't. So
throughout the entire series, and this is the season in particular that we kind of see her character kind of develop into who she really is. You see that she's going to stay loyal to Jack, and that she is starting to maybe step out on her own and bend some of those rules that constrict her from helping Jack because of CTU policies. You see her step out of, out of those director orders, and maybe she's in a little gray area there, and that gives more that makes the character more complex.
Oh yeah, and you actually have respect for her because this is the classic example of, we may not be doing what the bosses told us to do, but we're technically also not breaking the rules either. It's just the boss happens to be wrong and they don't want to fess up to it, and
we're trying to do the right thing, what we think is the right thing.
Mm-hmm. And it's just so funny how Sarah is just being so demeaning to her. She's like, she must be a mole or something. What's she hiding? And then she gets interrogated. So then she realizes anyone can be suspected if they withhold information. And it's so wild how this season they introduce, this is where it becomes like Star Trek. They got the red shirts, just the guys coming in, the security guards saying, step away from your computer terminal, ma'am. So we can't go this season without bringing up the returning character, disgraced agent who got a presidential pardon from Palmer, Tony Almeida. Did you expect him to return?
No, I don't think that I did.
It's so wild too, because it was like, and fun fact, he is the second character with the highest number of episodes. Or actually third place behind Chloe, and
Jack.
number one obviously is Jack. But yeah, it was just so wild how you didn't think he could possibly come back from that, after being threatened with prison time because he had given away a key location to a terrorist.
Are you glad they brought him back? Are you glad they brought him back?
I am, and I mean, in many ways, this is just also interesting. Just seeing, it's even more interesting when you look at the later seasons and you contrast this with here, just seeing, oh boy, how it all went wrong. Because
so when Jack goes to beg him for help,
yeah, Jack goes, I'm calling a friend.
Please, Tony. You're like, oh, please, Tony, come back, Tony, come back, Tony.
Yeah. He's living with an unhappy girlfriend who hates how he's doing, and he's just like, can you shut up? And he gets a beer, and he's just by his computer. He's like, I'm working. This was years before everyone was working from home. He was doing a bunch of other searches and everything. I don't even know what he was doing. I think he was just living on... Did he get to keep his pension or anything? Because it was very clear that I got almost a private eye sense from him. Like he was just doing a few other side gigs and just barely making ends meet.
He says in that conversation, he says, I'm disgraced. I'm considered a traitor by my country, And so I don't think that he would have his pension. I guess that's something.
Yeah, that makes better sense, because it seemed like that was just like the go-to. Is like, okay, well, you don't get any benefits, no health care, no nothing. So it seemed like, I hate to say this, it seemed like he was just doing just very generic, like, I guess he was living on her pensions and just crashing at her place, and he was just struggling to search for work, because it is so wild.
He looked pretty rough when you see him there.
He was very rough, and it was just so great how they introduced it. Jack, is cornered down in a garage. He's like, actually, before they even go anywhere, he's like, I'm calling a friend. You don't know who it is. And it was just such a good, so cool in the trivia how they noted how they kept.
Yeah, but you thought it might be Tony, right? You thought, yeah, it might be Tony.
Yeah, well, I kind of thought, but I didn't really know. And I was like, maybe it could be anyone. Maybe it could be just some other obscure person. But it was just so cool when it happened, because they didn't credit the actor, Carlos Bernard.
Right. I was thinking, I was like, it's going to be Tony. I know it's going to be Tony. I was thinking that.
Lo and behold,
yeah.
Jack is cornered down, Audrey's out of bullets, and so they're just like, they're prepared to pistol whip these bastards when they finally get to him, and lo and behold, they both get gunned down in the parking garage, and Tony's just like, let's go, Jack.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, very good. I especially dig, this is when they switched to digital, fun fact, in this season. The director noted how Collateral was out a year before, and so this was when everyone was realizing, all the big budget ones, most of them didn't really change until like 2007, but this show got with the curve. There's like, yes, we need, to save money. We also, this can work for this style, which is, just kind of
fast paced.
Very fast pace, and lo and behold, I'm sure everyone was happy, because this is like, it embraces it. It looks great at midnight, especially.
Real, yeah.
And
Collateral was such a good movie.
Oh, excellent! Totally, and same kind of deal. As you're looking at some suburbs and downtown areas of LA.
Mm-hmm.
They always noted how, it's not that easy to get around, but I think it also helped that they were also going in like less populated areas, so it's just like, it's just been a bit of disbelief there. I like how the terrorists are almost always seen just at a 24/7, sports bar. It's like, those are the places to hide out where people leave you alone. There's football on the background. No one's noticing a bunch of Middle Eastern guys who...
Hey, nobody notices. It's cool.
And
so let me ask you this. What percentage of the stunts do you think Kiefer Sutherland actually did himself?
He definitely did a lot of those fight scenes. obviously, and he'll even mention, you remember the RPG explosion when he's getting a few guys who know, near the end, who know Habib Marwan, and they get blown up in the CTU van along with the agents.
Yeah.
He was actually, that look on his face was an actual holy shit, because he had to know how to look in the scene. It was an actual, some kind of, they used practical effects, so that was an actual rocket that they propelled by him. So yeah, a lot of the jumps and fall down on the grounds are him. Obviously, anytime he's holding on to something, like a vehicle or the side or the driving, is someone else, and that was longtime stunt double Matthew Taylor, who also did some of the stunt coordinating in some of the fights early on. He had doubled him, the first 3 seasons, and same here. And then after this, he took off for something else, and I forgot who they had various other people double him throughout the rest of the season. But Matthew Taylor has just become a big scale Emmy-winning Screen Actors Guild stunt guy. Like, he's doubled Brad Pitt in 7. I forget who else. I think
just a pro.
A total pro. He did get a creative Emmy for this season, and then he later got Screen Actors Guild Stunt Award later on for True Blood. So yeah, he's gotten all kinds of awards and everything. But I mean, it's interesting what other stuff you see that he's worked on, like blockbusters include Takers, Cowboys and Aliens. This is like, yeah, that's a lot. The Last Castle.
Takers is a movie that doesn't get the credibility that it deserves either.
Oh, totally. And more or less, I mean, they're using the best of the best people who have been in all kinds of things, is like, utilize your crew. Just from that get-go here, like, this show just assembles itself as like, we are going to keep breaking more and more rules, and you just won't be able to, believe it. But believe it, buddy. And like, when he has to trail the terrorists to the bunker without giving himself away, his only lead, he's already on the run, he's already wanted by authorities, and at the last minute, his clearance gets revoked and then accessed again, just so until he can get to the bunker. It was just even great how he stopped the terrorists at he had to stall them, so he had to pretend to be a robber at the gas station. It was just so awesome how he has to tell the guys, play along. It's kind of their A-team at that point. And when Bill becomes, the new head of CTU, it's more unpredictable there, because he, has clearly been in a relationship with Michelle, and he does not get along with Tony at all. He's just like, this guy, why is this traitor even working here? Hate this guy. So I think it was interesting just because we, the viewers, knew Tony did not, much like Jack, never meant to be a traitor or break the rules, but he often, it's just so funny, where Jack often oversteps, Tony kind of holds back here. He can't afford to screw up his chances of any kind of career at this point, but it is just so funny how later on he basically goes all American Psycho, falling down. He just gets way out of line, and Jack has to reel him back in or arrest him. And yeah,
well, it works for Jack. I mean, that's why we all like Jack, is because we all fantasize about stepping over the line, going against the rules, and Jack does that well. But at the same time, he's able to play that guy that can keep everybody else in check.
He's not proud of who he is, and he also, because of the profession he chose years ago, he can't escape it. It's amazing he doesn't have any kind of PTSD at this point. He's basically just he's just a glutton for punishment.
That he'll turn himself in, seems like.
Yeah, he becomes even a victim of the system that isn't working. It's just showing how incompetent federal agents can be and how political it gets.
That's like his bargaining chip in a lot of scenes. He'll say something like, If I'm wrong, I'll turn myself in, or if I'm wrong, I'll give you my gun and my badge. If I'm wrong, I'll walk out of CTU right now. You know, he bargains like that to get what he wants.
They encounter Agent Castle, played by this other Canadian actor, Cameron Bancroft. Hey, relation? No, not really.
Yeah.
He's been in all kinds of things. Like, you instantly hate how over the top he is. It's like he is not reading any suspect their rights, and several times Jack and Tony are like, this is the best they can afford. God, this guy's an amateur hour, you know. He's gonna get us in a lawsuit, you know.
Right.
He's interrogating the terrorist mother, you know. This is like, Jack literally just pulls him to the side and says, take a walk, idiot. Tony and I need to be in charge, but unfortunately we're both returning agents, you know, because I quit and Tony got fired. We're on temporary basis, so we don't have as high a clearance level.
Right.
Also just can't afford to be stopped by law enforcement, because you know how that takes. You know, that will get in the way of their progress, or they'll have to clear a few things in order to be released.
Law enforcement is a constant uphill battle throughout the series.
Absolutely. And all the Homeland Security lines are always just, you know, ringing off the chains, so no one can ever answer their calls for helps until they've been kidnapped or anything.
Red tape.
Red tape, especially when we get to the Secret Service agents, where Logan is very insecure. He's brought back in Mike Novick. That's right, you know, from first 2 seasons from President Palmer's presidency. He's now just kind of overseeing. He's not his chief of staff, but yeah, he brings his chief of security, Walt Cummings. It's just so wild how Secret Service enters the picture. They think of arresting Jack, and they're like, no, let him go. And then, no, let's actually try and kill him. Will it succeed? We'll watch the rest of the season to find out. How did you like how they brought in Mike Novick, and how half the time he's kind of debating with Secretary Heller?
Mike Novick was always a character that I really liked. I thought he had a lot of good moral, ethical values about his character. And as the show goes along, you kind of see him step out away from that a little bit, and you kind of realize maybe he's got his own agenda going on here. And I think that just really develops him as a major character throughout the series.
So distracted with, again, Keller dealing with his openly gay, rebellious son, and the McClellan Forster military contractors who are crooked, and the various terrorists, that we forget about how Mike, very much like Tony and Jack, he's injured, and you know, he's licking his wounds and trying to get back into the second stage of his career, you know,
right.
After being disgraced.
Mike has been there. He's a character that we're all familiar with at this point. He's established, and then Walt Cummings comes in, and when Walt comes in, you know, he's kind of a new guy. We're like, who's this guy? And we immediately can see the contrast with him and Mike, and it really serves to put a lot of doubt into what Walt Cummings' real agenda is. And so there's a lot of misdirection there with
yeah. Because Cummings, you kind of don't know what to think of until the last episode, where it's like, oh, yeah, he's the real guy calling the shots here. This is some Dick Cheney, Condoleezza Rice type shit here. And, yeah, Greg Eidson it's just so fun just seeing him again just as Logan, because, like you say, he's just like, he can just read just... Fun fact, the actor's father was actually a mayor in Wisconsin, so I'm sure he got plenty of that. He injected a bunch of that Southern charm. He's like, yeah, you do get that good old boy kind of feel from him.
Background too.
Yeah, and I mean, the actor is just so good. He's had multiple roles on The Practice and the various Star Trek shows, and later on was on similar government roles on NCIS and Covert Affairs, and just like, so to see him on here, I mean, for God's sakes, his first role was as the religious nut job in Airplane. So, I mean, he's really good at just playing all these quirky kind of roles. He does so good at showing that whatever happens, his main consequence is that he knows that whatever he chooses to do it's going to probably, it can make his campaign look even uglier than it was before, or it can make it better. But at this point, he is doing total, what is my public figure looking like? He does
damage control.
Damage control, eliminate the problem, which is, what they don't know can't hurt them. And it's just such a shame because you like to think, when President Palmer, we grew to like him. And it's just so wild how they bring him later as a special guest star as like a consultant. It's like, I need your advice, former Mr. President. And you end up hating him even more when he just like says, without really saying it, is like, and that'll be all. But what he really meant to say is, duly noted, dismissed. Because this is like,
I was glad he brought Dennis Haysbert back, even if it was just for a short period.
Yeah, and you feel so sad for him.
He's a fan favorite, so I'm sure that increased viewership.
You instantly see the contrast. Is like, it seemed like Keeler was becoming a competent president. It seemed like the other guy before Palmer had been a competent guy who had just later, by the end of his presidency, they were ready for a different kind of blood. But despite his scandal that Palmer had, you never felt like he was trying to hide anything from the American public, but at the same time, he also couldn't let them worry. Here, he just doesn't want them to worry because Logan just doesn't want to have to deal with the negative press. He's not ready to lead. Logan, just so busy. They didn't get that on the 8 o'clock news, did they? It's like Palmer was never concerned about that. He was like, well, what do I say?
Yeah.
And he knew what to say. He just Mike always had to remind him how to say it, and he just caught on later on. Now, once again, I think this season works so well because there's actually some fun deleted scenes you should see because some of them work and some of them don't work. Like there's an alternate death sequence for one character. It doesn't look good because it wasn't fully edited. There was a different green screen in the background. But they had supporting actress Alicia Coppola, who you might know from those various JAG and CIS shows. She played like a Middle Eastern character, Nazir, who was like a communicator at CTU. I thought that would have been a fun kind of addition. You can see why they deleted the character because she served as basically just an someone to argue with Sarah and Edgar. It would have slowed down the plot had they included it in there.
Right.
And
they got to have a purpose. They got to go somewhere.
And once again, just you see the filmmakers comment in the various sections in the special features, and they're just like, yeah, well, once again, this just would not have worked. This would have been like Kim Bauer with the Cougar in season 2, or it would have been like the other asshole CTU guy. And so, it would have slowed down the plot. It would have just broken up the narrative, and it would not have worked for the best. It would have just been needless plotting that you could easily eliminate. So it unfortunately just had to go. I think the character could have been useful, but unfortunately, you understand why they just did away with it. There's some other good, interesting deleted scenes, but they, later on, the terrorist's family kid, Baruz, gets kidnapped by the terrorists. They want to use him for something, and you never know what happens to him. He's presumed to be dead, but then it gets even more complicated because in a deleted scene, he's shown being rescued by Curtis, who kills the kidnappers. I don't know if they felt it was too happy in an otherwise grim show or what. I think they did away with it just because, again, time, and they had to concentrate on the main storyline and not have numerous subplots get overplotted.
I agree with you there. That could have been an interesting little, outlet.
Oh, yeah, especially when you get to the final plot twist. And there's a returning character from the first 2 seasons pop up again, and you're like, whoa, she's here? Okay. I'm not sure if we want to spoil it completely, but I mean, I dug even some of the other side villains who were being utilized by Marwan because he knew what was really cool when you finally concentrate on Habib Marwan is just, again, Arnold Vosloo just really, he doesn't shoe the character. He plays him like a smooth criminal. And still sticks out to me as probably the most complete villain because his emphasis from beginning to end, why he feels wronged.
He just steps right into that and does it to perfection. And when you're watching him, you feel like he's not really stepping outside of who he really is very much. I mean, obviously, I don't think he's a nuclear terrorist or anything like that, but that's the way that it reads on the screen.
He can't go wrong at this point of his career, and this was like a step up. Is like, I get to be an even more gripping villain.
Yeah,
And
he's committed to it, 100% commit.
I really dug how he just always had a backup plan for his various things. Like, they shy away from it, but you kind of know what happened. You see all that traffic, which actually claims the lives of Edgar's already, hospice-ridden mother. And it's like, yeah, he melted down like 2, again, grids just at a factory. Is like, there's definitely a bunch of people who died from that radiation, which would have probably, I think last I checked, would have claimed the lives of at least like 4,000 people or some shit like that. So it's like, yeah, he definitely killed at least 1,000, and they shy away from it, but you get a sense from the music and just the final shots is like, yeah, this is not looking good for that portion of LA.
Right.
And that's where you have to suspend belief too. Because if that did happen, then how did they get around in other areas of LA?
Right. It's surprising that they allowed it to happen on the series. I thought, well, they're, because usually there'll be like a threat of something happening, and then Jack or the president or CTU would somehow intervene and save the day. But the fact that they let it happen, that much more of a valuable villain.
Totally.
$32 dead.
What's the initial assessment?
An act of terrorism. When you get to CTU, I want you to find out all the details and call me.
Yes, sir.
A Turkish national on the FBI watch list by the name of Tomas Şerek could be related to the bombing.
He wouldn't risk exposing himself here in the United States for a train bombing. It's not big enough. You were gonna tell me. What is your primary objective?
Secretary of Defense!
The Secretary of Defense and his daughter have been kidnapped by a terrorist cell. They will put Jim on trial and execute him.
The Americans have been able to shut down most of the reactors. But I'm gonna have to manage the override personally.
The man responsible for planning today's attacks, Habib Marwan.
It's time for you to go. Proceed as planned.
We got a plane to catch.
Mr. President, we have reason to believe that a stealth fighter has been stolen by a terrorist and is in your airspace as we speak.
Air Force One has been fired on.
Air Force One has suffered an indirect hit by an air-to-air missile.
The plane left a trail of debris as it went down, including the codes and locations of our entire nuclear arsenal.
Marwan has a nuclear warhead.
People of America, you wake up today to a different world.
Mr. Vice President, you need to make arrangements to be sworn into office as soon as possible.
I will give you full authority to act as my proxy whenever you think it's necessary.
Jack, is there any doubt in your mind that Lee is working with Marwan?
No, sir.
We have to get Lee out now and find out what he knows.
Yes, sir.
No one connected with the government can admit to knowing anything about this. Ever.
I got him.
The murder of a Chinese consul on Chinese soil could be construed as an act of war. You are part of the covert team that mounted the assault on our consul. All we want is a name.
His name is Jack Bauer.
I'm looking at a live feed of the warhead. It's been mounted on a missile.
The missile's still on target. We've got to get out of here.
It's coming towards Los Angeles.
They have planes ready in the air now.
I've got good tone. Missile away. The target is down.
He should be turned over to our government to be tried and sentenced.
Jack, do not turn yourself in. The man they sent to take you into custody has orders to kill you. They think the Chinese will break you. Jack, you do understand when you hang up, for all intents and purposes, Jack Bauer is dead.
I understand that, sir.
So, do you have any other closing thoughts on how this season jives and is organized?
I don't know if you want to talk about the final shot or not.
It's so sad because you
I
don't.
I did like it, but at the same time, you're wondering, what does this mean? What's going to happen now?
Just even the other supporting villains, like the pilot, who decides to, break in and take over a stealth bomber. That was very brilliantly paced. The Morrison guy, who's played by Keith Surabochko, who you might know as one of the cops in The Dark Knight and from The Equalizer. He was the mustache guy who was talking very deeply, who had those heat-seeking missiles.
Right.
Is like there were 2 backup plans that were great. So Marlon was just like, hey, I got those set to go off. And you could buy into it because where I feel like movies like The Dark Knight Rises went wrong, this one you could buy is this was in an abandoned forest nearby. They had these guys
talking about The Dark Knight Rises like that. You be talking blasphemy on here.
Hey, I could not buy into that storyline. This one I could buy into because it wasn't underwater in a sewer. This was out and about. You could buy that someone had obtained some of this material and they were just hiding it in a forest, keeping it safe. So that way, if anyone came around, they could kill them, assume their identity and cover and bury the bodies. And it's and then there was that other femme fatale, Nicole, who was pretty deadly. She kills one of the CTU agents and assumes their identity.
She was bad.
Oh man, ruthless. And that's all before you get to the returning character who I will leave mysterious. That being said, I guess you would rank this season higher.
Oh yeah, I like it. Definitely better than season 3.
Yeah. Because season 3 had time to grow, but it wasn't fully mature, but it was still on the right track. And this was just this is the best moments of season 2 and 3. It may not be as mysterious as season 1, but at least I can honestly say I watched this one more. It's just everything I need is all here. And
well, you've got all your good characters that are established, minus Nina Myers, obviously.
Yeah,
she really brought a lot to the first few seasons.
All of Disgraced Widower Jack is gone. There's no more of that bullshit anymore. And Kim's not here, so now it's not about his family. It's how does Jack survive? How does he
move forward?
How does he move forward? And how do the other people find closure to their already escalating, trouble-ridden lives? So, yeah.
And you still have the ongoing relationship with President Palmer and Jack Bauer, and you see some of that in the closing sequences. But all the characteristics and subplots and characters that we have become accustomed to over the first 3 seasons, most of them are involved in this, and they are established, and you're just looking at how they're growing and developing as this series and franchise moves forward at this point, and what's going to be the new norm and what's going to fade away.
As much as I miss this franchise, I'd rather just binge the whole thing again. Okay, well, thank you ever so much for being on here, and we'll, again, tackle season 5 and 6 another day.
Sounds good.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up